You know that classic trope of the high school loser who gets bullied and suddenly discovers a hidden talent? We grew up watching it. It's the classic zero to hero formula of an absolute nobody taking on the world. Something we've seen dozens of times across pop culture and anime. But what if I told you that the best version of this journey doesn't involve magic or superpowers? It involves nothing but buckets of sweat, bloody noses, chaotic friendships, and a borderline criminal amount of head trauma. And that's exactly where the classic we're revisiting today comes in, Hajime no Ippo. At first glance, it's just the story of a sweet kid and human punching bag who decides to take up boxing. But the truth is, this anime is insanely good. It's packed with shameless, questionable humor, training regimens that border on torture, and fights so visceral you can feel your own ribs cracking just watching them. We're about to see proof that taking a beating with a smile can actually take you far. So get ready to dive into this insane grind to the top. We meet our pathetic protagonist, Ippo, who spends his life carrying boxes on his mom's boat and obviously has no friends. The humiliation peaks when two-bit delinquents led by Umazawa drag our punching bag under a bridge. They beat the kid up and insult his mother. Ippo tries to put on a tough face, but completely wimps out a second later. Out of nowhere, a walking brick wall named Takamura appears, dodges the useless extras' punches, rips off their buttons, and scares the trash into the gutter. Ippo is so mesmerized by this alpha display that he faints, whispering about how amazing the big guy is. Waking up at the Kamigawa gym, Takamura gives it to him straight, saying he's disgusted by wimps, but lets the crybaby take his frustration out on a sandbag. Against all odds, the kid unleashes a monstrous punch that almost tears the leather, revealing arms packed with pure muscle thanks to his manual labor. After treating the kid's hand, Takamura hands him some boxing tapes and leaves. Ippo goes home, hates himself for being useless, and binge watches the videos. He becomes obsessed and days later begs the brute to let him go pro. Takamura finds it amusing, kicks a tree to make it rain leaves, and issues the ultimate challenge. If the loser can catch 10 leaves before they hit the ground within a week, he'll teach him how to punch guys for real. Ippo spends a week in the woods playing leaf catcher day and night. He realizes he needs to replicate the sound of the big guy's punch and practices the motion frantically, mastering his left-hand speed. When Takamura shows up, the kid drives his shoulder into the tree, throws invisible jabs, catching 10 leaves at once using only one hand.
I did it! See? Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 leaves! Whoa, I did it!
Dumbfounded by his agility, the brute almost needs to chop him down like a tree to calm the kid's hype. The next day, Takamura drags the kid to the Kamigawa gym. The old geezers take one look at Ippo's loser face and instantly yell that he doesn't have what it takes. Ignoring the rejection, Takamura throws Ippo into the locker room and warns him he's going to suffer in a sparring match against Miyata, a prodigy with a model's face. The bell rings, and Ippo flails his arms around like a wacky inflatable tube man, hitting nothing but air while Miyata just watches. Takamura tells Ippo to turtle up and the idiot obeys, hiding his face so pathetically that he leaves his body wide open. Miyata takes advantage, buries his fist into the kid's stomach, and finishes it off with a blow to the face. Ippo drops on all fours, kissing the canvas while trying to understand how his defenses were penetrated so fast without warning. Despite getting his brain rattled, Ippo stands up, leaving the old man and the runway model shocked. In the second round, Miyata charges forward like a tractor, works the body to lower Ippo's guard, and plants another rock-solid punch on the protagonist's face. Ippo eats canvas for the second time, but sheer stubbornness makes the kid get back up after Takamura's motivational screaming. Cornered on the ropes, Takamura tells him to run away, and the kid obeys, scrambling around in a completely clumsy fashion. Meanwhile, two extras mock Miyata for not being able to put the rookie to sleep, which pisses the prodigy off, prompting him to unleash a monstrous hook to Ippo's ribs. The punching bag only survives because the bell decides to save his miserable life. In the corner, Takamura can't understand how the kid takes so much punishment. Ippo replies that getting bullied at school taught him how to swallow a beating in silence. In the third round, Miyata goes straight for the kid's chin and drops him to the floor once again. Ippo gets up drooling, attempts a desperate attack on thin air, and Miyata finishes the job with a counter that sends the protagonist straight to dreamland. With the kid passed out and sprawled on the mat, Takamura turns to old man Kamigawa, proving that the ability to take a beating with a smile was the rookie's bizarre talent all along. The old man finally accepts the kid into the club. When Ippo wakes up soaking wet on the floor, he cries rivers of joy over officially becoming the newest masochist on the block. Our useless protagonist drags his carcass to the gym, only to be harassed by the clown duo, Aoki and Kimura. But before things get weird, Takamura crashes the party. Out of nowhere, old man Kamigawa spawns out of hell, tells everyone to shut up, and decides he'll train Ippo himself. During mitt-work, Takamura notices the old man is using unpadded leather, so every punch makes a satisfying smack. Kamigawa drops the truth. If Ippo learns to punch from all angles, he can swallow the prodigy Miyata whole in 3 months. Coincidentally, Miyata himself overhears this and shoots Ippo a death glare. The next day, our hero is jumping rope, sees his platonic crush jog by, and trips over himself. Kamigawa throws the kid in the ring to teach him the uppercut. Ippo puts all his strength into it and misses miserably, but Takamura swears the technique was flawless. The old man tells Ippo to do some shadow boxing. Looking like idiots, Aoki and Kimura try to demonstrate the technique, get into a philosophical debate, and knock each other out. Ippo realizes he needs to visualize his platonic lover Miyata naked in his mind. He becomes a professional stalker, spending days spying on his rival's footwork. After school, the delinquent Umezawa tries to ask him to hang out, but Ippo sprints away at bizarre speeds. Finally, sweaty and in the middle of the night at the gym, he closes his eyes and manages to capture Miyata's seductive shadow in his imagination. Trying not to look entirely useless, Ippo asks Kimura for shadowboxing tips, but just gets bullied for free. Desperate not to get beaten up again, he begs old man Kamigawa to teach him how to survive Miyata's counters. The trainer teaches him a master tactic: annoy the rival by making him wait, and when the kid comes rushing in, bury a deep uppercut into his chin. During a break, Miyata's father, who was watching everything from the shadows, trades gossip with Kamigawa about the rookie's absurd potential. The true revelation happens in the locker room. Ippo hides behind a towel, but Takamura yanks it away, unleashing the real monster of the series. Our protagonist's legendary and gigantic anaconda, a colossal trunk.
They say size doesn't matter.
After the humiliation, Takamura orders him to buy boxing shoes. At the store, a salesman tries to push an expensive pair, but Miyata spawns out of nowhere and picks the perfect infighter boots for Ippo's troglodyte style. As a thank you, our hero buys his rival a juice box. Sitting on the grass, Miyata vents that his dad retired due to an injury and became his personal trainer. Fired up, Ippo returns to the gym and tells Kamigawa he wants to face the prodigy head-on. The old man flashes a sadistic smile and puts the kid through weeks of uninterrupted physical torture. Finally, after coughing up a lot of blood, Kamigawa declares his punching machine ready for war. Ippo now runs so fast that the delinquent Umezawa doesn't even bother chasing him. At home, his mom tells him to relax and imagine his opponent's face as a dead fish. At the gym, reporter Fuji ignores the recyclable trash that is Aoki and Kimura. Takamura, wearing a ridiculous bow tie, reveals he'll be the referee for the massacre between Ippo and Miyata, and the reporter decides to stay for the carnage. In the ring, Ippo tries to force the dead fish tactic, but ends up seeing Kamigawa's bald head as an angry octopus instead. The bell rings, and Ippo charges in, swinging his arms at nothing, while Miyata dodges with the disgust of someone stepping in crap, but the stalker training pays off. Ippo figures out his rival's rhythm, sticks to him, slips, and lands a 1-2 combo right in the preppy kid's mug, knocking him flat on his ass. Miyata gets up at 9. Overconfident, Ippo tries the exact same move, but Miyata slides and delivers a brutal counter that sends the loser face first into the mat. The protagonist gets up at 8 through sheer willpower. The bout turns into a bar brawl. Miyata punches the rookie's thick skull and takes an explosive hook in return, falling for the second time. Desperate, Ippo drops low to charge his deep uppercut, but Miyata reads the move, counters him right in the solar plexus, and drops him again. Coughing up his own soul, Ippo gets to his feet at 8 just as the bell rings, ending the first round. As the second round gets underway, they seem evenly matched, but Miyata shamelessly ties up the fight in a sweaty clinch to catch his breath. The third round kicks off and Miyata switches his stance, effortlessly dodging Ippo's pathetic swings before punishing his body with punches so heavy that our hero's legs turn to jelly. Ippo kisses the canvas, but manages to drag himself back up at 8. Taking a deep breath for the final stretch, he tells old man Kamigawa he has one last trick. As soon as the bell rings, Miyata corners Ippo against the ropes and starts punishing his brilliant turtle strategy until his guard breaks. Just as as Miyata winds up the final punch to send the kid to the graveyard, Ippo throws a desperate uppercut that seems to miss the target entirely, but Miyata freezes mid-attack and collapses out of nowhere. Takamura counts to 10, declaring our useless protagonist the winner, while Kamigawa makes sure to point out that his technique is still garbage right as Ippo passes out from exhaustion. Later that night, a photograph reveals that Ippo's punch had caressed the tip of Miyata's chin with terrifying precision. While Kamigawa processes this monumental fluke with the defeated boy's father, Ippo rolls around in bed, too overjoyed by his victory to sleep, suffering from well-justified insomnia. Feeling an emptiness in his chest, Ippo returns to the gym only to find that his precious Miyata is gone, shattering his confidence. Old man Kamigawa notices Ippo hitting the mitts with the strength of a malnourished kitten and makes him become Takamura's training lapdog for a week. They run together through the streets, but Ippo almost coughs up his lungs whining about how much he misses Miyata. Takamura drags the kid back to his filthy apartment, while the big guy is in the bathroom suffering to squeeze out a single drop of urine due to extreme dehydration. Ippo snoops through some adult magazines and gets caught red-handed.
Huh? I see.
Wait, please wait!
The veteran chews on a sad tomato, offers the kid a hot bowl of ramen, and shares the story of how Kamigawa pulled him off the streets during a street fight. When it's time for bed, Takamura spends the night groaning in hunger pangs, making Ippo realize that a pro's diet is medieval torture. The next day at Korakuen Hall, Takamura obliterates his opponent with a brutal knockout in the blink of an eye. Outside the arena, the drama peaks when Miyata emerges from the shadows to reveal he quit the gym just so he could legally punch Ippo in the face at the Rookie King tournament. The day of the protest arrives, and Ippo spots a creepy, scrawny guy named Mashiba lurking in his weight class. Shaking like a chihuahua, Ippo steps into the ring, making his opponent think he's in for a free win. But once the fight gets going, the kid realizes the guy's movements are pathetically slow compared to his beloved Miyata's, dodging with ease before shutting the lunatic's lights out with a combo. Right after, Mashiba steps into the ring with his bizarre stance and starts whipping his opponent with flicker jabs that look like tentacles, beating him so brutally he even shoves the referee away. Following the horror show, Mashiba intimidates Ippo in the hallway, telling him to run away to another weight class, but Ippo turns down the cowardly offer, stating he's already promised to meet his soulmate in the tournament. After getting his boxing license, our hero bumps into his school's delinquent gang. Umezawa snatches the license and mockingly asks if he's training for a bloody revenge arc. Ippo yanks the document back and replies that he fights simply because he loves the thrill. Back at the gym, Ippo stares in awe at tapes of Miyata and Mashiba's brutal debuts, until Kamigawa announces who our protagonist's first victim in the official ring will be. Old man Kamigawa drops the bomb and announces that Ippo's next victim will be Yusuke Oda, a nobody with a mediocre record. The crew treats it as a free win, which ironically makes our useless protagonist break into a cold sweat from anxiety. Meanwhile, Oda slacks off from his road work and gets chewed out by his trainer for having zero stamina, a trainer who also happens to be his girlfriend's father. At the ramen shop, the veterans trash the opponent's reputation. Aoki reads the cards of fate and guarantees Ippo's victory, cracking everyone up, since Aoki's accuracy is perfectly inverted, predicting a total massacre against our boy. Across town, Oda tries to turn on the charm with his girlfriend, but she slaps him and pushes him away. She destroys what little dignity he has left by threatening a humiliating breakup if he loses, especially after finding out Ippo's crew called him pathetic. Feeling the noose tighten, the coward magically turns into a beast in training, shocking his father-in-law-to-be. On the day of the weigh-in, Ippo tries to be polite but gets hit with a murderous glare in return. After a nostalgic jog reminiscing about his leaf-catching training days, the two finally step into the ring to decide who goes home with the win and who leaves empty-handed. The bell rings and Oda charges in like a rabid bull, but the useless protagonist finally dodges beautifully and lands right crosses on his opponent's face until the round ends. In the second round, Ippo sinks his fists into Oda's abdomen, destroying the poor guy's legs and dropping him to the canvas. But the miracle of teenage love makes Oda get up at 7. Rushing to finish the job, Ippo slips, giving his opponent the perfect opening to graze his eye and open a nasty cut, forcing the ringside doctor to threaten stopping the fight. Realizing his legs have turned to jelly in the third round, Oda adopts the dirty tactic of clinching and smushing Ippo's face against his own until the eye turns into a fountain of blood. Needing to protect his torn face, face. Ippo is left with only one usable hand and is forced to switch to southpaw, taking a hellish beating because he doesn't know the stance. Our traumatized hero remembers his basic training, channeling all his fury into a festival of rapid jabs that deform Oda's face until the ref takes pity and stops the massacre.
What? That's insane! Great, we won!
With his brain scrambled, Oda thanks him for the beating, while his girlfriend swoons over his swollen face and tells him to stick with the sport. To celebrate, Kamigawa opens his wallet to pay for the team's after-party, and while the waitresses at the bar sigh over Ippo's bruised face, Takamura decides to humiliate him publicly by pulling the kid's pants down, revealing the terrifying heavyweight hidden down there. Trying to be the hero of the ring doesn't change the fact that our protagonist is still the school's lonely weirdo. During lunch on the rooftop, his old gang of bullies corners the kid, but this time they are sweating bullets, begging for the bloody details of his first victory. They cowardly run away before even managing to apologize. At the gym, a reporter walks in, completely ignores Takamura's mountain of muscles, and focuses entirely on the rookie. The guy frantically jots down notes on how Ippo uses the peekaboo guard just like Mike Tyson. As a bonus, he hands over a tape of Ippo's rival destroying opponents, and Ippo spends the whole night watching Miyata on TV. The next day, the old trainer announces his second victim, Fujiwara, a psycho-looking freak. As soon as the fight starts, the protagonist charges forward punching like a meat grinder. Realizing he'll be annihilated if he plays fair, the villain dives headfirst, planting his rock-hard forehead right into Ippo's face and dropping him to the mat. Ippo gets up at 5, but the scumbag repeats the headbutt and only gets a useless warning from the blind ref. Anticipating the dirty trick, our hero braces himself. During the next exchange, when Fujiwara lowers his head to drill into Ippo's skull again, he is greeted by an uppercut from the depths of hell that separates his consciousness from his body. With another victory under his belt, his redemption is completed the next day. The leader of the bullies forces a horde of delinquents to worship the kid's strength, declaring to the whole world that they are best friends. A year has passed since our useless protagonist became the gym's punching bag. To celebrate, the gang goes out to gorge on cheap ramen, and Ippo has the audacity to ask about the senior tournament, only for Takamura to rub it in everyone's faces that Aoki and Kimura failed miserably. Back at the gym, Kamigawa announces that the next victim is named Jason Ozma. The crew immediately assumes the guy has a serial killer's name, and Takamura suggests Ippo adopt an intimidating ring name like Big Daddy Third Leg, which obviously perfectly fits the monstrous anatomy in his pants. But a reporter kills the mood by revealing that Jason is just a friendly foreigner. Far away from there, this supposed monster is actually an angel who wants to win prize money to spare his trainer's wife's calloused hands from patching up sandbags. But during a routine sparring session, he sends an arrogant fool's soul straight to the ICU with a right hook. Knowing about the Americans' lethal hooks, Kamigawa puts the sadistic Takamura in the ring to beat Ippo up until he learns the basic concept of dodging. After getting beaten like a dog and spending days dodging iron bars in a park, our hero finally manages not to get decapitated by Takamura's heavy hand. Weigh-in day arrives, and Ippo and Ozma have a super friendly chat, making old man Kamigawa die of embarrassment over his pupil's absolute lack of killer instinct. At home, Ippo's mom refuses to go watch her own son get his face remodeled by punches in a ring. At the arena, the bell rings and the two charge at each other, completely ignoring any sense of self-preservation. Ippo tries to obliterate the American's guard, but Ozma shows the terror of the West, landing a left hook so brutal it shuts down our protagonist's nervous system, dropping him to the mat. With only fractions of a second left before losing, Ippo stands up, only to be bombarded with rib-crushing punches that almost make him throw up. The first round ends with a mutual punch to the face. In the corner, Kamigawa tells Ippo to stick to the exact same suicidal strategy, throwing in the brilliant medical advice to not show any pain, even if his lung collapses. The second round turns into a crazed cockfight, with Ippo dodging lethal hooks by a hair's breadth. They start trading dozens of punches simultaneously, proving that self-defense is a concept neither of them respects, actively destroying their brain cells with every blunt impact. The blind slugfest continues, with Ippo forcing a psycho smile to pretend he doesn't doesn't feel his facial bones turning to dust. But the theater ends when Ozma dominates the exchange and knocks our hero down once again. Thanks to his trainer screeching, Ippo pieces his dignity back together and stands up at 8. Ozma steps in and throws an oversized hook, but Ippo magically ducks and sinks his fist deep into the American's gut, forcing him to kiss the canvas this time. Driven by the tear-jerking memory of his trainer's wife sewing sandbags, the American gets back up too, and the two return to destroying whatever is left of their skulls. Ozma pins Ippo to the ropes and launches a right hook strong enough to put a satellite into orbit, but our protagonist drops low just in time and returns the favor with an uppercut straight from the depths of hell, following it up with a criminal combo that finally deletes the American from the conscious world. The referee declares the victory, and Kamigawa pretends the kid didn't almost die 3 times. Ippo thanks the foreigner for the mutual beatdown session, while Ozma leaves to a round of applause. Far away, the delinquent gang cheers, while Takamura, Aoki, and Kimura celebrate by pointing fingers and laughing hysterically at the great winner's completely mashed and disfigured face. Our favorite punching bag tags along with Takamura to watch the prodigy Miyata destroy a poor guy named Takada. In the stands, the protagonist spots the girl he stalks while jogging and starts drooling, forcing Takamura to yell at him to focus on the fight. In the ring, Miyata eats punches just to counter them with double the force, dropping Takada to the canvas like a ragdoll. Back at the gym, reporter Fuji rubs it in their faces that the tournament favorites have already advanced. Ippo's next hurdle is Kenta Kobashi, a nobody who hits soft but loves to leech points. The crew also watches the massacre of Ryoichi Hayami, a preppy kid who dodges everything easily before throwing his special move, the shotgun, right in his opponent's face, driving the fangirls wild and making the trio of veterans die of envy. Later, Ippo finds out the girl from the gym works at the Yamanaka bakery, activating his supreme virgin mode. The next day, the guys mock his lovesick face, but Takamura and Kimura take the opportunity to expose Aoki's peculiar tastes, revealing photos of monstrous-looking women hidden in his locker. The night ends with Takamura forcing Ippo into an all-male beach training camp, while the trio of veterans discreetly pack plastic dolphins and pool floats in their bags, fully prepared to slack off. On the train to the beach, the trio of professional slackers is already hunting for any woman in a bikini, while the protagonist carries all the luggage. Upon opening the bags and finding inflatable dolphins, Ippo realizes this training camp is a monumental scam. While the veterans hit the waves, Ippo decides to take a break, only to be haunted by traumatic nightmares of his coach screaming at him and his rivals brutally pummeling his face. When the idiots return, they start doing road work on the sand, but Ippo completely sinks in, until he notices the running pace only speeds up when they pass hot girls. At night, after punching the air, the protagonist passes out early. Being the great friends they are, Aoki and Kimura tie the kid to his futon, and Takamura finishes the job by hitting a sleeping teenager with a devastating suplex.
Did you just see my suplex?
He's not moving.
The next day, Ippo tries to tag Kimura and fails miserably. Takamura kicks off his shoes and reveals that without strength in his lower body, he'll get swallowed alive in the ring. Ippo begins training his speed until he can run fast enough to catch up with Aoki, who immediately splashes water into his eyes. To celebrate, they light up the glorious Ippo rocket, a tribute to the massive weaponry in the kid's pants. The explosive initially fails. The veterans start giving speeches about world domination, but in a moment of poetic justice, a rocket suddenly fires straight toward them, sending the whole group scrambling for cover. Getting played for a sucker buying juice for the freeloaders, Ippo catches a weirdo spying on the gym. Being the insufferable goody two-shoes he is, he returns a dropped notebook and discovers the stalker is Kenta Kobashi, his next opponent. The wimp freaks out, assuming Ippo read his secrets, and declares he'll dominate the fight. Kamigawa simply tells Ippo to use brute force to grind the nerd to dust. At the other gym, Kobashi is the laughingstock for his pathetic punches, but his trainer insists knockouts are overrated. On fight day, Ippo steps into the ring overflowing with blind confidence. When the bell rings, Kobashi sticks his left arm straight into Ippo's face. The protagonist tries to charge in like a dumb bull, but the nerd simply wraps him up in a clingy clinch every time a heavy punch gets close. The referee spends more time separating the two than the actual fight lasts. With annoying jabs and surgical cowardice, this, Kobashi dodges everything, turning our hero into a pathetic amateur punching at the air. The first round ends with Ippo's towel soaked in frustration. In the second round, desperation hits hard. Ippo throws wild swings until he miraculously pierces Kobashi's guard, pushing him to the ropes. Just as the protagonist finally winds up his sweaty fist to take the poor bastard's head off, Kobashi throws himself into yet another tactical hug, completely stalling the fight and draining the very last drop of dignity from our hero. While the old man Kamigawa sweats bullets watching the protagonist get beat up, Kobashi dominates the second round, scoring points like a professional coward. Running out of time, the coach tells Ippo to focus on combinations and go for body blows. In the third round, Kobashi keeps reading our hero's movements, dodging everything and maintaining his humiliating lead. When the situation gets critical, Kamigawa resorts to a dirty trick and shoves ice directly onto Ippo's massive package, praying it wakes the monster inside his trunks. Needing a knockout to avoid elimination, Ippo goes on the offensive with blood in his eyes. Kobashi swings his arms desperately and lands a punch to the jaw that leaves the protagonist seeing stars. Smelling victory, Kobashi gets arrogant and goes for broke, aiming for a knockout. Big mistake. Leaving his face wide open, he hands Ippo the chance he was waiting for. The protagonist bounces off the ropes, lands a brutal straight, and sinks his fist into the poor guy's abdomen with a devastating body blow. Kobashi collapses, and his body shuts down completely, securing Ippo's victory with a ridiculous 2 seconds left on the clock. Thrilled, the kid runs to tell Takamura, but arrives just in time to see the troglodyte kissing the canvas against champion Hajime. Ippo starts screaming like a crazed fan, making the entire arena join in, which magically resurrects Takamura, boiling with rage and ready to commit murder in the ring. Driven by the fury of being humiliated, Takamura gets up, lures Hajime into a trap, and connects an uppercut that shatters the champion's jaw. He unloads a demonic combo, beating his opponent until he loses the will to live, even using a bizarre uppercut just to keep his lifeless body suspended in the air before letting it drop. The ref doesn't even bother starting the count and crowns Takamura the new champion. Later, walking home, the supposed god of boxing almost faceplants, proving that getting hit in the head has consequences, but he encourages the kid to win the tournament. The next day, our hero tells his teacher he'd rather get his brain professionally rattled than go to college. Later, Ippo is approached by Kobashi, who dumps on him the mission of defeating the superstar Hayami, no matter what. Watching the tapes, Ippo realizes that fighting in close quarters is suicide against Hayami's shotgun. The training shifts to frantic dodging just to survive. At a diner with the gang, they decide that anyone fighting before the Kuka-oki at the arena is pathetic. But to prove the nightmare's level, Ippo goes to watch Hayami fight and sees the playboy disintegrate a veteran with his machine gun combo, leaving our protagonist completely paralyzed with fear, aware he needs to improve so he doesn't become a human strainer. After Hayami's little show empties the arena, the pitiful Ooki scrapes a pathetic win in a nearly deserted ring.
Ooki in the blue corner!
I won! I did it! You liked me! You really liked me! Did you guys see it? Was that awesome or what?
With a month left until the finals, Miyata bumps into Ippo and demands he makes it to the final match, reminding him that he left the gym just so they could kill each other in the ring. Meanwhile, the spoiled Hayami tells the reporter Fuji he won't waste time studying Ippo's tapes, and admits he uses his arrogance just to attract the media. Inspired by a chat with Umezawa, Ippo begs Kamigawa to teach him a counter. The old man gives in to the kid's terrifying stubbornness. Using Aoki as a punching bag, Ippo messes up the timing and gets beaten up for days. The situation gets so deplorable that Takamura and Kimura bet on Hayami, forcing Aoki to bet on the protagonist out of pity. Even with a fever, Ippo forces Aoki to continue the test, refusing to rest. In the semi-finals, Hayami parades out to hysterical fans, while Ippo walks in looking like he got hit by a truck. Kamigawa warns that the chance for the counter will only appear once. The bell rings, and the fight turns into a technical game of chess. Hayami speeds up and corners the protagonist, who fires back with a hook. Waiting for an opening for an uppercut, Ippo discovers the pretty boy decided to fight up close, just to rub his superiority in his face. The protagonist accepts the suicidal invitation to a slugfest. At close range, our useless protagonist discovers he only knows how to take a beating, while Hayami blocks everything and smashes his face in. Hayami punches him so hard that Ippo kisses the canvas. At the count of 8, he remembers Ozma and Kobashi and gets up ready for more humiliation. He scrapes his glove against the pretty boy, which is enough to make the golden boy tremble with fear. Trying to run away like a coward, Hayami is provoked by Kamigawa and jumps back into the brawl. The ring turns into a meat grinder of punches. Ippo uses all the strength from his training and pins the heartthrob against the ropes. When Hayami tries an uppercut, Ippo throws a hook and the two clash face to face in the stupid synchrony of guys who only know how to move forward. Hayami acts tough, but his legs have turned to jelly. Ippo misses his combo like a blind man in a shootout and takes the shotgun right to the face. Without leg strength, however, the heartthrob shotgun turns into a squirt gun. Ippo sinks a deep punch into Hayami's abdomen, shutting his body down. The pretty boy tries to keep his pose, but Ippo lands a violent uppercut that sends the pop idol straight to dreamland. The referee has to peel Ippo off the corpse. While Ippo celebrates the upset, Hayami wakes up delirious, claiming his legend is just beginning. Ignoring orders to rest, our useless protagonist decides to relax by running a marathon. On the way, he runs into the bakery girl. So nervous that he tosses her bread into the air, Ippo uses his jabs to catch them all before they hit the ground. After showing off, he says punching people is fun and leaves. Witnessing this bizarre scene, Takamura gets motivated and goes back to training like a madman. Meanwhile, at the weigh-in, the psychopathic skeleton Mashiba tries to intimidate Miyata, who completely ignores him. On fight day, the two start with a super defensive technical exchange. Miyata begins to dominate with his speed, forcing the lanky guy to use his weird assassin stance. Mashiba unleashes his flicker jab and Miyata responds by switching his stance to southpaw. Thinking he's being underestimated, Mashiba attacks, but Miyata blocks with his shoulder and lands a counter that lays the psycho out on the canvas. The bell saves Mashiba from a knockout. In the second round, Miyata's dad tells him to fall back, but the ignorant kid is afraid of embarrassing himself and charges in to beat the weirdo. Desperate from the beating, Mashiba lands the dirtiest stomp in history on Miyata's foot. The criminal foul breaks the prodigy's posture, opening a hole in his defense that the lanky guy exploits to smash his face with a cowardly combo, dropping Miyata straight to the floor. Miyata gets off the floor, motivated solely by the image of Ippo in the finals. With his legs rendered useless by the cowardly stomp, all the prodigy can do is bob and weave his torso to dodge the blows. Mashiba comes in thinking he's about to end the game, but eats a counter right before the round ends. In the corner, Miyata's dad begs him to quit, but the kid refuses to throw in the towel so he won't lose his match against the protagonist. In the third round, Miyata keeps dodging, but lets out a groan of pain as he steps back, giving away his condition. Mashiba realizes his victim's legs have failed and mercilessly punches his abdomen. The crowd begs the ref to stop the carnage. Mashiba throws a colossal punch. Miyata counters, but his body has no strength left to finish the job.
Gotta knock him down now.
Miyata is rooted to the ground! The damage is too great!
The psycho backs off, scared to death of the zombie kid, but Miyata soon pins him against the ropes. The lanky guy throws the fatal punch, and Miyata attempts the ultimate counter, but his broken body exacts its toll. Mashiba's punch connects, blowing up Miyata's skull and securing the psycho's victory. Miyata is carried out completely unconscious on a stretcher. Ippo receives pathetic apologies from Miyata's dad on behalf of his broken son. Consumed by the frustration of losing his long-awaited final, our irrational hero beats up a defenseless vending machine before storming off in a rage. The Kamigawa gym is boiling over with discussions about Miyata's defeat. Mashiba, with the charm of a demon, admits to reporters that he stepped on his opponent on purpose. Outraged, Ippo beats the sandbag until his own hand gushes blood, proving that emotional intelligence is not his strong suit. Kamigawa bandages him up and shows him tapes of his opponent. Mashiba's weakness is his hitman style, which leaves his guard wide open, but his elastic arm keeps everyone at bay. The coach tells Ippo to focus on quick dashes to break through his guard. Trying to relax, Ippo visits the bakery cutie, only to discover a harsh reality. She is Kumi, Mashiba's younger sister. Shocked, Ippo confides the secret to Takamura. Obviously, by the next day, the champion has already spread the gossip throughout the entire gym. While everyone makes fun of Ippo, reporter Fuji reveals that Mashiba's parents died and the psycho only fights to put food on his sister's table. Ippo couldn't care less about the villain's tragic backstory and stays focused on crushing his opponent. Meanwhile, Mashiba promises his sister he'll rip the protagonist's head off on his way to the world title. The day of the tournament's apocalypse arrives. Kumi hands her brother his gear. In the locker room, room, Ippo is terrifyingly quiet, storing energy for the carnage. The bell rings and Ippo charges in like a runaway freight train. He misses, and Mashiba activates his hitman style. Ippo tries to hide behind his peekaboo guard but eats repeated flicker jabs from the arm with infinite reach. The villain throws a chopping right that comes down like a guillotine, and Ippo survives by clinging to the ropes. The flicker massacre keeps grinding Ippo's face, but his brain wakes up. He gets used to the human whip, dodges, and enters the danger zone just before the bell saves the psycho. Kamigawa warns Ippo he'll be turned into minced meat if he keeps taking hits from a distance. In the second round, the kid starts bobbing his torso like a pendulum, leaving Mashiba catching butterflies in the air. Ippo corners his opponent against the ropes and throws a brutal right hook. The joy is short-lived, as Mashiba blocks the blow using the point of his elbow, turning Ippo's hand into an anatomical tragedy. Ippo decides the best strategy against an elbow block is to keep punching the bone repeatedly, ignoring the pain. The psycho fakes a flicker and cocks a chopping right straight at the protagonist's face. Ippo eats the punch but uses the slugfest to crush his rival's elbow once and for all. With his left arm dangling uselessly, Mashiba loses the hitman style. Ippo smells blood and starts shredding the opponent's internal organs with brutal combos. Mashiba's legs give out, but Ippo is also one step away from collapsing from taking so much damage. The bell rings. In the audience, Kumi can't stand seeing her brother get beaten and tries to run away, but gets dragged back. Mashiba takes another beating, but defying biology, he ignores the excruciating pain, raises his destroyed arm, and invokes the hitman. Thinking it's a bluff, Ippo goes in with his chest wide open and eats a surprise flicker, followed by a chopping right that sends him to the canvas. While the count echoes and Mashiba's legs tremble, Ippo grabs the ropes and pulls his destroyed body up, ready to prove who is the truly stubborn one. With his left hand useless, Ippo decides to use his shattered right to smash Mashiba's abdomen until he drops his guard. Desperate, the human praying mantis grabs Ippo in a bear hug. Ippo tries to pull away, but Mashiba won't let go. Ippo responds by spamming punches to the weirdo's ribs until he drops it. Mashiba attempts a hook. Ippo dives and returns across to the chin, followed by a straight that humiliatingly drops the villain. Ippo is dying, his hand in pieces, while Mashiba tries to get up like a zombie. The referee counts to 10 and crowns Ippo the East Japan Rookie King. Mashiba throws an uncontrollable tantrum and refuses to accept the result. Ippo counters by offering a respectful handshake, making Mashiba run away in a pathetic fit. In the infirmary, Kumi begs her brother to stop, but he confesses that he's addicted to violence. Ippo, now ranked 10th in Japan, tells his friends he's dropping out of the All Japan tournament because he's broken. He goes to the bakery to apologize to Kumi, only to find out she quit her job. In Osaka, the maniac Takeshi Sendo watches Ippo on TV, drooling with excitement and dreaming of destroying him. Sendo, the West Japan Rookie King, travels across the country just to stop Ippo from dropping out. Obsessed with punishing the protagonist, he even invented an exclusive finishing move, the smash. Ippo whines that his hand needs 2 months of rest. Sendo decrees that this is the exact time left and sticks to the kid, justifying his desire to trade punches with real men. In the gym showers, Takamura tries to prank Aoki, but accidentally bumps into the Osaka hillbilly. In a moment of pure insinuation, Sendo tries to leave acting like an untouchable tough guy, but comes back crying soon after because he spent all his money on the ticket and is broke. The next morning, Kamigawa catches the invader training, figures out his identity, and pays for his trip back. Being a masochist, Sendo volunteers for a sparring session with Takamura. He tries to use a dirty elbow, which makes Takamura lose his patience and play with the kid. Sendo unleashes his smash, but Takamura tanks it and shuts off the hillbilly's brain with a straight right. Sendo gathers his teeth, catches the train back, and warns he'll be waiting at the tournament. Covered in goosebumps, Ippo is suddenly desperate to fight. At Dr. Yamaguchi's clinic, Ippo discovers that his muscles can't handle his own strength. She warns him he needs to bulk up his shoulders if he wants to keep crushing people without grinding his own bones to dust. In Osaka, Sendo receives a package from Ippo indicating he will try to fight, getting the hillbilly so hyped that he goes back to training like an animal. At the gym, Ippo begs Kamigawa to let him fight. The old man agrees, on the condition he gets medical clearance on fight day. The stamina torture with Takamura begins, overseen by the doctor. The gym crew watches Sendo's tapes and realizes he is literally an aggressive clone of Ippo, complete with the same pathetic guard. In Osaka, Sendo hands out tickets to street kids to guarantee a crowd for the carnage. 2 days before his announced death, the team invades a partner center gym in Osaka for some sparring. Ippo brutally dominates his opponent using only his jab, but when it's time to unleash his right hand, his brain shuts down. The fear of his broken hand paralyzes him, and he takes a free counter, proving that fixing a bone is easy, but curing the kid's psychological trauma will be the biggest problem. Seeing that Ippo can't even hit a focus mitt without whining, Kamigawa is already thinking about throwing in the towel. Their salvation is Dr. Yamaguchi, who evaluates the rotten hand and shoots the kid up with painkillers, warning him that if his bones turn to flour during the fight, he'll only find out the next day. At the Osaka arena, the local crowd boos Ippo. At the bell, Sendo lunges like a rabid cat, firing absurd jabs that disintegrate the protagonist's guard. Ippo freezes in terror against the ropes, taking a beating and too scared to use his right. Trying to follow his coach's screaming, Ippo attacks the body but eats a punch first. In the middle of the enemy combo, Ippo miraculously clips Sendo's face and realizes the injection worked. Zero pain. With the confidence of an idiot, Ippo hits the turbo and relentlessly batters Sendo, pinning the King of Osaka with a flood of punches to secure the lead for the round. But Sendo gets up with blood in his eyes in the second round and unleashes a mutant version of his smash, sending Ippo's guard straight to outer space. With his brain rattling, Ippo runs away trying to survive. In the center exchange, the King of Osaka dominates the brawl, leaving Ippo terrified to step back and get swallowed by the smash. With a psychological feint, Sendo cancels his special, dodges Ippo's hook, and lands a straight. Ippo is so lost that he eats the real smash from below, grazing his face and stripping away his dignity. Saved by the bell, he refuses to sit during the break, knowing his jelly legs wouldn't be able to stand back up. The third round shocks the audience. Ippo drops the peekaboo guard and mocks Sendo by copying his stance. Ippo throws a bizarre straight mimicking the smash's trajectory, and their attacks collide simultaneously in a suicidal clash. They go for a second head-on collision, but Ippo remembers his old rival, Miyata. Inspired, Ippo throws an ultra-compact punch that sinks into Sendo's face before the smash can hit him. The monster collapses, silencing the Osaka arena in a funereal way. The ref starts the count, but Sendo, fueled by hatred and the crowd screaming, gets up at 6, prolonging Ippo's nightmare. He charges forward with a brutal smash, taking control of the fight. Prepping another deadly attack, Sendo charges, but Ippo magically trips and clips the opponent's temple. Sendo ignores the hit and keeps bringing the pain without mercy. The bell rings, but the deaf ref lets the massacre roll for 10 more seconds until Kamigawa intervenes. In the corner, Ippo is running on fumes, while Sendo rests, with his eyes wide open. The coach goes to check on him and discovers the madman had been completely unconscious ever since the punch to the temple, fighting zombified purely for the crowd. Ippo wins the national title via a bizarre knockout. In the locker room, the zombie wakes up furious, demanding to know how he lost, before getting hounded by the kids wanting the video games he promised them. Meanwhile, the champion Ippo ignores everyone to whine on the phone to his mom, proving his neediness is incurable. On graduation day, the loner Ippo becomes the main attraction. Umezawa tries to apologize for his bullying but sneaks away. Soon after, Miyata announces his escape from Japan to fight decent boxers, only returning when the massive skill gap between them disappears. Ippo returns to the Kamigawa gym, which is now infested with rookies deluded by the team's fame, who tell champion Ippo to get out of the way. Annoyed with the daycare, Takamura drags the wimps out for a hellish run. Everyone quits, leaving one kid vomiting on the floor. When the rookie reappears running, Ippo goes to welcome him with open arms, but is rewarded with a stream of puke on his shirt. Takamura baptizes him Jeromichi. Aoki finds a photo of Ippo in the kid's wallet, revealing the boy is a terrifying fanboy of the protagonist. Ippo is forced to babysit his fan, teaching him the basics without using his broken hands. On the Veterans Fight Day, Ippo tries to act like a pro in the locker rooms, but is interrupted by a reporter bringing a special guest, the untouchable Eiji Date, the Japanese featherweight champion. Champion Eiji Date introduces himself, but Takamura steps in, warning that Ippo is dangerous. Date doesn't care and invites Ippo to come take a beating at his gym later. Kamigawa adds fuel to the fire, warning that Ippo needs to take 9 more heads before challenging for Date's belt. The next day, the doctor clears Ippo to use his right hand. He celebrates by nearly tearing the punching bag off its chain with a thunderous blow. The joy ends when the Nakadai gym calls in the favor for Ippo to serve as a guinea pig in a sparring match. Takamura and Yamada escort him, but Takamura makes up an excuse and ditches the kid. Ippo realizes the champion has mastered the corkscrew blow. To humiliate him further, Date fights without headgear. The bell rings and Ippo is swallowed by the pressure, taking clean hits. In the second round, Ippo desperately bobs and weaves, running from the corkscrew blow, but Date corners him against the ropes. The champion unleashes the technique, drilling right through the protagonist's guard with zero ceremony. Ippo tries to block the follow-up left, but his body shuts down, paralyzed by the impact, and he takes a massive whack right to the face, crumbling out cold like a sack of potatoes. The champion poses like he's untouchable, but the kid rises from the dead before the count ends. They trade punches until Date punches Ippo's heart again, paralyzing and knocking the poor guy out for good. Later, in the bath, Date reveals his weakness, crying because his skinny arms ache from blocking Ippo's heavy punches. While talking to Yamada, Ippo tries to act humble with stories about being bullied, making the kid idolize him even more. Soon after, the former rookie king Okita challenges Ippo. His sick rage stems from jealousy over Date crushing Ippo instead of picking him as a sparring partner. In the ring, the two brutes go at it, mashing each other's faces with jabs before the ref even steps out of the way. However, Okita surprises the dumb protagonist and crushes his guard with the exact same corkscrew blow he sneakily copied from Date himself. With his brain paralyzed trying to process that Okita knows his master's technique, Ippo takes free hits. Cornered and shaking with fear, he pulls a surprise when Okita tries to finish him with the corkscrew. Ippo dodges and lands a devastating uppercut from below. The two decide to trade wide-open punches. Ippo crushes the jealous guy's stomach and sends him to the floor. Takamura makes up the excuse that Ippo took hits on purpose to set a trap. Okita gets up using the power of friendship for Date, but it's useless. Ippo ignores his opponent's feint and smashes his face in completely, securing the 5th spot in the rankings. The loser cries, apologizing to Date, who gets philosophical, saying Okita failed because he tried to reach him, while Ippo wins because he wants to run over everything in his path. Ippo watches the champion obliterate a background character with his signature moves, and Date drops a cheap pickup line on the microphone saying he has unfinished business in Japan, staring Ippo down. Overseas, the prodigy Miyata scrapes a depressing draw and starves himself trying to make weight for a class that isn't even his. Ignoring all common sense, he accepts a suicide match against the Jack Thai fighter Jimmy Sisfar. His dad rubs it in his face that his counters are weak, while the locals mock him. Proving he's out of his mind, Miyata decides to invent the ultimate counter. He dehydrates in the sauna and runs in the rain like a total masochist. In sparring, he takes a beating on purpose just to test his new weapon and utterly destroys his opponent. Right before the actual fight, Miyata is so drained from dehydration that he barely has the coordination to tie his shoes. His useless dad warns him of the danger, but the prodigy remembers Ippo's crazy stunts and heads straight for the slaughterhouse. Driven purely by the obsession to impress his eternal rival, two idiots rush to watch Miyata's fight, and one of them reveals he bet his life savings on the kid. Walking in, they see a bloody Miyata kissing the canvas in the 3rd round. Ignoring the boos, he gets up, ditches his classic outboxing style, and bets everything on the jolt counter. He lowers his guard on purpose, eats a monstrous punch, and falls choking on the ropes, but rises like a zombie. During the break, his dad realizes the kid's eardrum is blown out and he's hallucinating, but still sends him back out to take a beating. Miyata takes a shot to the ribs and misses a pathetic swing, losing his balance. Sisfar rushes in, thirsty for the finish. Miyata uses his own motor failure to his advantage and lands a devastating counter right on the Thai fighter's mouth. The poor guy swallows the full force of the jolt counter and collapses out cold. Miyata turns his back and finds out the opposing corner threw in the towel. The crowd cheers. Days later, Miyata heads to South Korea in search of more aggressive foreign fighters, leaving behind the advice that the secret to the counter is timing and heart. The routine of sweat and blood is interrupted when idol Kumiko Morita crashes the gym, making the grown men flex their muscles in a pathetic attempt to impress her. The useless protagonist is dying of jealousy but tries to act like the only focused one there, ironically getting picked to play fight with the girl.
Hey, quit hugging the babe. We want to turn too.
After the recording leaks, Ippo realizes he accidentally issued a direct challenge to the champion, Date, on national television. The TV also shows the muscular Russian, Alexander Volk Zangief, warning that he's coming for Date's belt. The day of Yamada's protest arrives, and he suffers a full-blown anxiety attack in the bathroom. Ippo calms the poor guy down, but during the evaluation, Yamada takes such an embarrassing beating that the crowd starts roaring with laughter. Ippo almost flies into a blind rage, but Yamada pulls a miracle knockout out of nowhere and becomes a pro boxer. Back at the gym, Kamigawa announces that Ippo, Aoki, and Kimura will enter the A-class tournament. The Russian monster Volg is fully confirmed. Returning home, Ippo asks his mom to hold down the fishing business so he can go to a training camp. The old lady agrees, but passes out from exhaustion the very next day. Consumed by guilt, Ippo rushes to the hospital to find his mom suffering from anemia, finally realizing that while he was playing with gloves, she was carrying the entire household on her back. Trying to act like a functional human being, Ippo takes over the fishing business and discovers that real manual labor is hell on earth. From her hospital bed, his mom suggests closing the shop so the boy can play fighter, but the stubborn kid says he can carry boxes and punch sandbags. The whole gym takes bets that he's going to crash and burn and quit boxing altogether. After a single week of getting his ass kicked by responsibilities, Ippo almost gives up on life. He visits his mom and catches her sneaking out of the hospital, desperate about her useless son's future. Ippo blatantly lies that he's just taking a break from boxing. Ignoring the tapes of his next opponent, Takuma Saeki, the protagonist pushes forward with the sheer determination of a born loser. Salvation arrives when former delinquent Umezawa begs to carry the stinking fish. Umezawa reveals his dream of becoming a mangaka and drawing Ippo's journey, which means he needs the kid to keep beating up other men. 3 days of hard labor destroy Umezawa's physique, but upon seeing Ippo shadowboxing in the middle of the night, the delinquent rekindles his fiery passion and refuses to quit. Thanks to his fans' sacrifice, Ippo returns to the gym, stunning the pessimists. To welcome him back in the most humiliating way possible, Takamura drags the kid into a brutal sparring session. Tossed to the floor in pure agony, Ippo proves his masochism by crying tears of absolute joy while his body gets pulverized. Kamigawa throws Ippo into the fire of the A-class tournament, fully convinced he has a master plan against Saeki, the famous speed star. Fuji and Okita drool over the guy's speed during training, while Date whines that he couldn't even lay a finger on the speedster. Ippo asks Kimura for tips on fighting track stars, tries to copy his rhythm, but ends up looking like a lame penguin. Meanwhile, Saeki confesses that he prefers the pro world for the thrill, practically begging Ippo to give him the chills in the ring. At the hospital, Ippo turns into Cinderella when his mom gifts him new trunks, and Umezawa sponsors his shiny new shoes. At the weigh-in, Aoki and Kimura tell Ippo to stare down his opponent like a psychopath, but the kid has the killer instinct of a toy poodle and greets Saeki like a telemarketer. In the locker room, Ippo is shitting bricks until Umezawa holds his hand to calm him down. In the fight, Kamigawa drops his genius strategy: do absolutely nothing. Ippo stands planted like a statue, which completely weirds Saeki out. Despite his suspicions, the speedster can't handle the tension of being ignored. He dashes in and lands a right that leaves the protagonist dizzy. Ippo tries frantically to counter, swinging wildly like a blind man, but miraculously corners Saeki. Just as he's about to unleash a fatal combo, Saeki simply slips through the punches and bails, leaving Ippo looking like an idiot, swinging at the wind. Despite the tactical advantage, Ippo keeps punching mosquitoes until the bell saves the round. Date plays the intellectual in the crowd, swearing he's going to learn how to deal with fast guys from the protagonist. In the second round, Ippo repeats the tactic of missing on purpose just to push Saeki into the corner, but the speedster uses the ropes as a slingshot, whips out his flicker jabs, and turns Ippo's face into actual meat tenderizer, abusing his blind spot until the bell cries out of pity. In the corner, Kamigawa delivers a generic motivational speech, telling Ippo to focus on landing one single punch. The third round begins with Ippo chasing Saeki around like a drooling dog, but the guy is too slick and punishes his face. Dead tired, our hero accidentally bumps into his opponent, feels something magical, and has an epiphany. In the fourth round, Saeki tries to slip into the blind spot, but Ippo finally lands a blind hook right on his mug, following it up with a liver blow that makes the speedster kiss the mat. Saeki gets up, swearing it was pure luck, except Ippo has finally figured out the guy's rhythm and forces him out of his comfort zone with a preemptive strike. The speedster attempts a counter, but the psychological trauma from the hit freezes his brain. Capitalizing on the enemy's mental lag, Ippo buries his fist into his face with so much hatred that Saiki goes out cold with his eyes wide open. The fight ends with zero glamour, and Saiki cries in the locker room after hearing that his perfect little rhythm is what ultimately handed him the loss. The gang arrives just in time to see Vold playing with Suzuki like an amateur, until the foreigner ignores the ref trying to stop the fight and unleashes a brutal combo that sends the veteran straight to the Shadow Realm. Despite the massacre, Vold walks away looking incredibly depressed, leaving Ippo wondering why. That night, Aoki and Kimura also win their bouts, securing a 100% win rate for the gym. But instead of celebrating, Ippo and Kimura end up crying because they have to face Volg and the psychopath Mashiba in the finals. To cure their depression, Takamura drags everyone to karaoke and tortures their ears by singing 50 times in a row, until pure desperation forces the three to accept their fate and start singing too. On their way out, Yamada starts drooling over the protagonist's body blow. Ippo destroys a street sign in a demonstration, making the gang run for their lives. Soon after, they find out Yamada is moving away, and Kimura suggests a traditional farewell party. When Yagi takes the kid down to the basement, expecting cake, Yamada discovers the party is actually a group beatdown. The veterans mercilessly pummel him. A sadistic Takamura, Aoki with his double punch, and Kimura dancing around with his footwork. Even after getting beaten like a stray dog, Yamada survives. Feeling jealous of the assault, Ippo ignores his own injuries and steps into the ring just to bury his fist in the kid's liver, making him puke his guts out. In the end, the seniors clap, acknowledging how much the kid has grown, and Yamada promises never to forget the cavemen who taught him how to fight. Aoki and Kimura realize the useless protagonist is about to leave them in the dust and decide to sweat it out so they don't become dead weight. Takamura gives them a reality check about how both their careers will go down the drain if they lose. Trying to play the good guy, our lonely boxer watches tapes of their opponents, looking like a schizophrenic mimicking their movements in the ring just to serve as a punching bag for his friend's training. But since the universe loves to humiliate side characters, on fight day, both of them get severely beaten, returning with their tails between their legs and plunging everyone into maximum level clinical depression. The next day, Old Man Kamigawa gets into a shouting match with the foreign trainer Ramuda and returns to the gym fuming with rage. He tells the protagonist he's going to hammer a new weapon into him for the next fight, but first, he needs to strengthen his legs until he turns into a damn jumping gazelle. To train his thighs, Ippo goes to a public pool, and the gym's gang of meatheads decides to follow him like a horde of creeps. After a whole week of kicking around in the water, Kamigawa finally gropes his legs and approves the verdict. Ippo follows the instructions for the new technique, and when he fires a full power punch into the heavy bag, the impact makes the poor equipment fly, as if it just took a hit from an invisible cannon. Our insecure hero is shitting his pants, doubting if his gazelle punch will ever hit Volg's mug, but Old Man Kamigawa tells him to strike only when the Russian stops to breathe. Ippo dives into an insane endurance training regimen, trying not to have a heart attack. Meanwhile, Volg studies the tapes and realizes the kid actually gets off on trading blows in the ring. Aoki and Kimura start to think Ippo is frying his brain, planting seeds of doubt. However, Dr. Yamaguchi pays a special visit to give him a rejuvenating massage, revealing that Kamigawa himself sent her to make sure the kid's body wasn't falling apart. Completely relaxed by the doctor, Ippo goes back to heavy training. Later, he bumps into Volg on the street, and the foreigner plays the tragic backstory card, fighting only to pay for his sick mother's treatment. The next day, Ippo finally pulls off the gazelle punch combo, and the gym's two failures beg him to avenge their humiliation. The day of the massacre arrives, with Takamura and Date commentating comfortably, and Old Man Kamigawa frothing at the mouth at the foreign trainer. Locked in the ring, our protagonist suddenly realizes he's just a piece of fresh meat served inside a hungry predator's cage. The first round kicks off and the Russian charges like a runaway tank, turning the protagonist's face into a target. Volg lands hits while our genius hero closes his eyes right as he takes a punch. Pinned against the ropes, taking a rain of blows, Ippo curls up like a scared armadillo, but three hooks forcefully rip his head out of hiding. The Russian hammers away mercilessly, leaving the crowd wondering if the kid is nothing but a joke. Just as Volg preps the final blow, Ippo goes into autopilot, vomits out a desperate counter, and sends the Russian staggering in shock. Following Kamigawa's suicidal advice, Ippo sticks to his opponent to trade sweat and punches in a bloody close-quarters brawl. In the second round, the Russian dominates, pummeling Ippo, but feels too sorry for him to use his deadly white fang technique. Punished for going soft, he watches Ippo launch the gazelle punch straight at his chin, knocking him down. But the bastard blocks part of the impact and gets up at the 8 count. Ippo rushes in, thirsty for blood, but when he tries to strike with the gazelle again, Volg crushes his hopes with an uppercut and a devastating straight that shuts off the kid's brain. Ippo kisses the canvas and is saved by the bell. In the corner, the genius Kamigawa confesses he has absolutely no idea how to stop it and tells the protagonist to simply embrace death and go all out again. The iron-chinned protagonist continues his routine of getting beaten, but decides the best strategy is to stand planted like a lamppost. Volg turns Ippo's face into a punching bag until the ref starts a count. When Yagi suggests throwing in the towel, the sadistic Kamigawa instantly refuses. The Russian tries to rip the protagonist's head off with his deadly combo, but Ippo drops before the blow lands, proving that collapsing from exhaustion is also a valid dodging tactic. Remembering his coach's screams, Ippo pulls strength from the beyond, gets up, and unloads on a completely shocked Volg, getting saved by the bell. Kamigawa praises the kid, while the foreign coach realizes the boy is absorbing the brain damage using his legs. In the next round, Volg targets the protagonist's belly. Using absurd stubbornness, Ippo returns a punch to the Russian's pancreas. The foreigner regains control and completely paralyzes Ippo, but when it's time to finish the job, he misses the mark. Kamigawa screams for the kid to attack, and Ippo launches a colossal straight right. Without his headgear and completely gassed out, Volg tries to lure Ippo into the gazelle trap. But the protagonist finally uses his remaining 2 brain cells, spots the trick halfway through, and redirects the brutal impact straight into the poor guy's stomach. After swallowing a colossal body blow, the Russian collapses. But since the power of family trauma is the strongest magic in the sport, Volg starts losing consciousness, remembers his poor sick mother, and that gives him the strength to stumble back up, tripping over his own shadow. Desperate, he throws himself at Ippo in a sweaty hug just to stay upright, and the ref ends the round before Kamigawa can order the kid to execute the foreigner once and for all. Ippo is absolutely sure the Russian is still going to unleash the white fang. Volg begs for a genius strategy from his trainer, who tells him to just destroy his opponent. In the new round, the 2 exhausted zombies can barely stand, focusing only on not kissing the mat. Feeling the torture, Volg finally unleashes his trump card combo, but Ippo magically dodges the bricks and finds the juiciest opening of his life to bury a gazelle punch straight into his opponent's chin. The grotesque impact nearly rips the Russian's neck off. He tries to force his broken body to get up at 7, realizing he actually loves trading punches, but crumbles like a house of cards right onto the referee. Ippo is declared the tournament champion and decides to celebrate by completely passing out and stealing Volg's stretcher. At the hospital, a crushed Volg apologizes to Ippo. The protagonist's mother offers an innocent apple, which triggers the Russian depression all over again, making Volg run off to write a sweet letter telling his mommy he did his best. After waking up in the hospital, our favorite punching bag gets a visit from his idiot friends, who proudly reveal they spent the last few days collecting his urine. Completely disgusted, Ippo flees to the bathroom, gets dizzy, and almost collapses, only to be caught by the nurse, Kumi. The girl doesn't hold a grudge over her brother's destroyed face, and tells him the monster Mashiba won his tournament. Once discharged, the gym's leeches demand that Ippo use his prize money to fund a double date with the nurses. Kimura uses Kumi to force his hand. At the bowling alley, Ippo proves his hands are only good for punching and scores an incredible 0 points. Aoki destroys everyone at the game, but throws logic out the window and picks the least attractive nurse, Tomiko. Ippo plays the ladies' man escorting Kumi, but the romantic tension is annihilated when the boogeyman Mashiba arrives and Ippo runs away like a little kid. Out on the street, he bumps into Mashiba again, who demands the kid beat the champion Date just so he can butcher him in the future, a threat that bizarrely fires up the protagonist. Back at the gym, Kamigawa hands out the fight schedules and humiliates Takamura by showing him a magazine featuring the champion acting like a complete asshole, thinking Baldaoki is also in the pit of rejection, the idiots call him, but Nurse Tomiko answers, leaving the 3 virgins paralyzed as they realize the weirdo was the only one who actually scored. While the Nakadai gym applauds Date for knocking out some nobody in sparring, the old man realizes his little pillow punches won't be enough to put our dense protagonist to sleep. Sweating sweating like a pig during his jog, Date thinks constantly about Ippo's body, remembering how the kid survived the primate dogfight against Sendo using short hooks and a complete lack of self-preservation. Back then, Date even tried to pierce the kid with his heartbreak shot, but Ippo kept bouncing back asking for more, proving his colossal tolerance for pain. Refusing to drop his local title before crushing Ippo, the champ reflects on the boy's recent fights. He has flashbacks of Ippo being humiliated by Saeki, only to land the monstrous blow that made the speedster forget how to walk. Then, he remembers the Russian Volk, who had the instincts of a wolf but questionable cardio, getting run over by the gazelle punch when his legs gave out, proving that taking a beating until the opponent gets tired is a perfectly valid tactic. Realizing the kid has turned into a real monster, Date figures out he doesn't want to let go of his shiny belt for anything. He runs back to the gym and calls Okita to the ring, ready to beat up his #1 fan just to prove to himself that his midlife crisis hasn't hit and that he's ready to grind the kid into dust. Trying to prove his testosterone still works, Date beats up 2 extras who are way above his weight class, while the scar on his nose throbs, reminding him of his greatest failures. Far away from there, Ippo and Takamura flip through magazines about the champion's past, claiming the old guy is past his expiration date. The champ has a depressive flashback to Mexico, where Ricardo Martinez smashed his face in, making him return traumatized and turn into a corporate zombie. Pretending to love office life, his wife couldn't stand the depressed loser crying over his trophies. She snapped and ordered him to get back in the ring and take a beating like a man. Magically cured by marital humiliation, Date reclaimed his belt in record time. In the present, Takamura discovers he's 200 grams overweight at the weigh-in, and drags Ippo to sweat it out in the sauna, spending a pure bro moment giving a speech about the magical power of champions. Before the fight even begins, Date emerges from the shadows just to rub his inflated ego in Takamura's face and humiliate our protagonist for free, saying his soft little hands could never rip the belt from his waist. Takamura decides to use his own face as a shield and spends the entire first round swallowing Tamaki's punches. Despite wobbling like pudding with his legs shaking, he refuses to go down, acting as the perfect bait. When Tamaki takes the hook, Takamura unleashes a hellish uppercut and sends the poor guy to sleep cuddling the canvas. Instead of applause, the crowd boos him with mortal hatred for being featured in the magazine as a pervert. Later, Ippo gets a desperate call from Kumi. The psychopath Mashiba won the lightweight title, but since he has the charisma of a door full of rusty nails, absolutely no one showed up to his party. Our hero arrives to find Mashiba with a squashed face, looking like a demon summoned from the sewers. Kumi swears his murderous wrinkles are just a smile of happiness, which doesn't make the situation even slightly less terrifying for Ippo. Back at the gym, Kamigawa orders Ippo to train to stick to Date's body, pressing in at a mere 10 centimeters to nullify the old man's Sunday punch. Reporter Fuji doubts it's possible to punch from that close, but almost wets his pants when Ippo fires off an atomic blow in that tiny space, proving he knows damn well how to cause havoc in incredibly tight holes. After sweating buckets in training, Kamigawa tells our useless protagonist to go home and sleep, but Aoki drags Ippo into a dark room. Kimura and Takamura pin the kid down while Tomiko reads his tarot cards. A mystical session cut short because the coach shows up to crash the party. At home, Ippo discovers his mom took off, leaving a heavy steak for him to scarf down before heading to the arena. Far away, Date finds out from his doctor that his elderly body is in perfect shape to mercilessly pulverize the kid. At Korakuen Hall, Umezawa gathers the school gang to scream for Ippo. The bell rings and the two start sniffing each other up close. Date throws a jab, Ippo dodges and decides to rub chests in an infight. Ippo escapes a trap and sinks a liver blow into the champ. Date gets a little annoyed, throws a hook to the ear that reboots Ippo's brain, and unleashes a humiliation combo. With 30 seconds left, Ippo shoves the old man against the ropes in an aggressive hug and punches his stomach, securing a tie for the first round. In the second, Date massages his own ego by trying to win the infight. Ippo throws a feint, lands a beautiful straight right to the champ's mug, and rocks his head like an inflatable tube man.
Another clean hit!
But walking back to his corner, Ippo realizes the harsh reality. His punches were hitting a rubber wall, causing absolutely zero damage to the macabre old man. Our protagonist whines in the corner that hitting the champ is like punching lead pudding, but Kamigawa tells him he's tripping. Boiling with rage over losing the round, Date refuses to back down and agrees to rub pecs with Ippo again. Under the old man's orders, Ippo sinks another body blow and a beautiful straight, but Takamura and Kamigawa finally notice the witchcraft. Date is spinning his neck like an owl to completely kill the impact. Taking advantage of the desperation, Date returns a punch that makes Ippo kiss the mat. Ippo gets up pretending it didn't hurt, but panics when he realizes nothing hurts the rubber senior citizen. Trying to compensate for his incompetence, he takes an exaggerated swing, gets countered, and spends the rest of the round being used as a heavy bag. The wild slugfest continues with Date dominating absolutely everything. Remembering his coach screaming about compact punches, Ippo manages to break through the defense and lands his golden sequence, finishing with the gazelle punch right to his target's face. Any normal human would be eating through a straw, but Date swallows the blow and refuses to go down. Terrified of the zombie, Ippo freezes just long enough for Date to twist his fist into a corkscrew blow that caves the protagonist's face in. The champ spams corkscrews trying to pierce Ippo's heart. Completely battered, the boy slides down the ropes to the floor, accepting his ruin. On the verge of accepting his fate as a loser, Ippo has a convenient flashback with Takamura and decides he still needs to take a bit more of a beating. He focuses his last few intact brain cells and lands a hammer blow that makes Date's legs shake like jello, but the bell rings. In the corner, Kamigawa realizes his protagonist is already in zombie mode. On the other side, Date ignores his own blood and demands his thighs be rubbed so he can return to the slaughterhouse. When the brawl resumes, Ippo is a walking corpse, blocking the champion's corkscrew blows out of pure survival instinct. Date pummels the kid, trying to land his heart-stopping punch to massage his ego before the world title match. Ippo's situation is so pathetic, he's only standing because he's leaning on his opponent, and when Date takes a step back, the protagonist drops like an empty sack of potatoes. Feeling pity, Date begs the kid to get up. Ippo picks up the pieces and throws himself at the old man. They go back to rubbing their bruised faces together, and Ippo returns a body blow to the stomach that punches the soul right out of Date. Seeing a golden opportunity, the crowd screams for the kid to tear out the champ's liver. Ippo pulls his arm back, but the old-timer takes a sly step back and sinks his fist right into the protagonist's heart. Before Date can land the lethal hook, Kamigawa throws the white towel onto the canvas, saving Ippo's lifeless body from total annihilation. With the towel flying in to save our useless protagonist's life, Date retains his belt, and Ippo wakes up to see the champ flaunting the trophy in his face. Date thanks his punching bag for making him feel young again, and Ippo accepts the submissive handshake. Sendo is furious seeing his former executioner lose and almost throws hands with Volg, who is also grinding his teeth in bitter jealousy. Backstage, Oki and Kimura beg Takamura not to be a sociopath. He surprises them with a warm congratulation, but quickly uses their reaction to humiliate Ippo to his very core, getting chased out of the room. Ippo, with his classic Stockholm syndrome, says he prefers it that way. Medical exams reveal Ippo's brain remains intact, surprising absolutely zero people. Ippo gets a call from Kumi, but his demonic brother-in-law Mashiba hijacks the phone, throwing a blinding jab through the line just to call Ippo a loser. Kumi takes the phone back and asks the defeated boxer out on a date. At the amusement park, she confesses that her brother chased away any potential boyfriends. Ippo tries to play the tough guy in the haunted house, but upon seeing a dummy with Mashiba's face, he screams and runs away, abandoning Kumi like a total coward. Walking home, Ippo realizes that loving the sport means nothing without the primal hunger to crush your opponent and walk away with the victory. Sinking in his own depression and reeking of defeat, Ippo goes to beg Takamura for the tape of his beatdown. Watching the massacre on a loop, he realizes a single well-placed punch to the liver would have brought Date down. Takamura, Aoki, and Kimura peek in and decide to bail before the loser aura infects them. At home, Ippo's mom notices he's traded his idiotic smile for the solemn funeral face of a real man. He cries, confessing he still wants to get beaten up in the ring, and she gives him her blessing to keep getting pummeled. Ippo travels to Osaka for the title match between Sendo and Volg, almost getting lynched by the Japanese fighters fans. Miyata appears out of nowhere to save his skin. The bell rings and Sendo tries to take the Russian's head off, but Volg counters with an uppercut, letting him know playtime is over. Volg slips in and sinks his fist into the Japanese fighter's liver and chin.
He answers with a hit to the jaw! He's staggering!
Sendo takes the beating on purpose to unleash a brutal smash, but Volg eats the blow and spits his white fangs right into his opponent's face. Ippo notices the same terrifying aura from Date in both of them, the eyes of lunatics who refuse to lose. In the second round, Volg returns 3 punches for every light tap. Sendo is completely humiliated by the Russian's technique, turning into a battered sack of meat until he kisses the canvas in the 6th round. But as he crawls, Sendo looks up and notices Volg's legs are shaking like a leaf. Realizing the Russian was just playing tough on wobbly legs, Sendo comes back from the dead. Volg tries to rip his head off with the white fangs but fails miserably. In the 7th round, Sendo turns on tank mode, absorbs the blows, and unleashes a left smash with the force of a freight train. Volg eats the hit, collapses, and nearly meets his ancestors, but gets up at the count of 8, motivated by his trainer. The Russian grabs Sendo in a desperate clinch, and the bell miraculously saves his skin. The slugfest drags on to the final round. Volg slips on the ring, but the blind referee rules it a knockdown, blatantly robbing the Russian in broad daylight. The judges shamelessly hand the victory to the hometown hero. Sendo wins the belt, but goes whining to Volg that he wanted a knockout, promising a rematch that the Russian knows will never happen. Motivated, Ippo goes back to punching sandbags, dreaming of the title, but Fuji spills the tea that the gym tossed Volg in the trash and shipped him back to Russia. Kamigawa explains that a foreign fighter without a title is a financial liability. Takamura steals Aoki's wallet so Ippo can catch a cab to the airport. Ippo finds Volg just as he's about to be deported. The Russian pretends to be fine, says Ippo taught him to love the sport, hands over his smelly gloves, and bids a dramatic farewell. Predictably, Ippo bursts into tears at the terminal, promising never to forget the man the boxing immigration system just crushed. Miyata returns to Japan, humiliating South Korea's #1. Lee Cheon-pil tries to pin him against the ropes but swallows an invisible punch that leaves the crowd in awe. On his way out, Ippo bumps into Date, who rubs it in his face that he'll be fighting an American for the world title, warning Ippo not to get left behind crying in the shower. At the Kamigawa gym, Oki's pride is shredded in seconds when the coach announces Ippo as the main event against Ponchai Chuwatana. Ippo has no clue who his rival is, and starts having late-night nightmares. The old man forces a training regimen focused 70% on defense, nearly making our hero throw up his lungs. Takamura, with zero empathy, reminds him that another loss would send Ippo into oblivion just like Volg. The pressure is so high that Kamigawa collapses holding the mitts and ends up in the hospital from overwork. Amidst the smell of ether and hospital beds, they vent about the loss to Date, and Kamigawa drops some hard truth. Playing untouchable doesn't work for Ippo. The secret is to hit before getting hit. With this epiphany, Ippo realizes the best defense is to crush the opponent first, returning focused on creating a brutal style to make his next victim regret being born. Kamigawa leaves the hospital grumbling like a zombie, unaware that Ippo has been secretly training a hidden move. At the weigh-in, Ponchai looks like a tank with a body chiseled by brawls. Fight day arrives, and Aoki dispatches his opponent in the first round to impress his girlfriend. Kimura steps in frustrated over an imaginary cheating scandal and beats the crap out of his opponent, fueled by the hatred of rejection. Ippo finally enters to a standing ovation. The bell rings, he extends his glove, but Ponchai ignores fair play and charges in swinging. After swallowing a few hits, Ippo switches to bulldozer mode and corners the Thai fighter against the ropes with absolute pressure. The problem is Ponchai rolls his neck to nullify the damage, exactly like Date. In the second round, Ippo starts weaving his body in a bizarre figure-8 pattern. The crowd panics, but Kamigawa decides to let him cook. That's when the magic happens. Ippo executes the move perfectly, unleashing a devastating machine gun barrage of left and right hooks, christening the legendary Dempsey roll.
He's doing the Dempsey roll.
Ponchai eats so many punches his brain shuts down and he collapses. Ippo crosses his arms like he owns the place. Before he can bask in the glory, champion Sendo crashes the post-match interview, steals the mic, and challenges our hero in front of everyone. Pressured by the bloodthirsty crowd, Ippo accepts on the spot, leaving Kamigawa fuming. The vibe should be celebratory after the win, but Takamura announces with sadistic humor that Kimura has a demonic fever and the doctors gave up on him. Takamura panics and drags Ippo to their friend's house, only to find out it was a joke and Kimura is just suffering from a broken heart over a girl named Reiko. Takamura finds photos of the girl under the bed, while Ippo clumsily feeds Kimura's fish, also named Reiko, fever medication. The fish floats unconscious, making Kimura snap in a fit of rage. In the chaos, Ippo finds an old photo album revealing Aoki and Kimura were street thugs 5 years ago. We dive into a flashback where the duo picked street fights all day long, but the bully life takes its toll. Aoki takes a brutal German suplex from a karateka, and Kimura is ambushed by 12 cowards who trash his parents' shop. Expelled from school, the idiots seek revenge in a street brawl against a rival school but get thoroughly beaten. Takamura shows up and sends the attackers running just with a glare. Instead of thanking him, the duo picks a fight with the mountain of muscle. Takamura promises not to use his fists, but lies blatantly. He knocks out Aoki with a jab and a straight, and puts Kimura to sleep with a volcanic uppercut. Waking up sprawled out, the two decide to stalk the monster for revenge, sealing their fates as gym punching bags. Kimura and Aoki invade Kamigawa Gym thinking they're tough guys, but get smacked around by the angry old man who hates their delinquent haircuts. After changing their looks, they return with their tails between their legs and are forced by trainer Shinoda to run like convicts. They swear to finish the route in 40 minutes, but crawl back over an hour later, complaining that a healthy lifestyle is ruining their cigarette addictions. After months of learning the basics, they have the audacity to think they can beat Takamura. The result is a daily massacre, where the monster uses them as heavy bags for months. When Kimura manages to merely graze his glove against Takamura's face, they celebrate like they won the lottery. 8 months later, the duo is thrown into the professional ring. The pressure shuts down Kimura's brain, and he drops in the first second. Takamura screams a bizarre insult from the crowd that miraculously ignites the kid's instincts. Comparing his opponent to Takamura, Kimura sees the fight is on easy mode and obliterates his rival. Aoki survives and wins as well.
You're too slow!
Outside the gym, they realize with disgust that they owe everything to Takamura and swear revenge against him. In the present, Ippo asks what it was like to punch Takamura, and in response, he takes a physical beating from the duo until Kimura's fish comes back to life in the tank. The homicidal champion Sendo defends his title by pummeling Saeki in just 1 minute, breaking the weight class record solely to prove he's faster than our clueless protagonist. Spotting Kamigawa in the crowd, he demands to fight Ippo and warns that the Dempsey roll won't even tickle him. Watching on TV, Ippo realizes Sendo has a built-in radar in his brain. Kamigawa admits the secret technique is useless against a psychopath who never backs down. To fix the flaw, the group heads to a deadly mountain training camp. They meet Nakoda, a senile old man. After running from an actual bear, Ippo loses sleep from pure terror. Kamigawa explains the Dempsey roll only works by forcing the opponent to retreat first, putting Ippo to work chopping wood to thicken his legs. The next day, they receive bear bells, except for Takamura, who trusts his giant ego instead. Ippo is brutally attacked by a furry beast, making Aoki and Kimura run away crying until they discover the monster was just Nakoda's slobbering dog. While the side characters suffer in the river, Ippo begs Nakoda for help. The old man flexes his back and reveals the secret of a fighter who never took a step back, pointing to his own hand shaking with Parkinson's. Hyper-focused on crushing Sendo, Ippo ignores the old man's trauma. Seeing his obsession, Nakoda reveals the ultimate mysticism. Ippo must learn to punch without using his fists if he wants to beat his opponent. Kamigawa tries to inject some magic into the training by explaining the concept of Saki, the ability to terrify the opponent by projecting invisible killing intent. He reveals Nakoda knocked him out in the past using it. Takamura uses Ippo as a guinea pig in the ring, firing off hate-filled feints that nearly make the protagonist swallow a punch. Aoki begs to show off his ridiculous frog punch, but Takamura kicks him in the head without mercy. At night, the two old men settle their rivalries by trading furious punches under the moon. On the last day of torture, Ippo begs Nakoda for more advice on his rematch, discovering that the secret is looking deep into the opponent's eyes to read their soul. Meanwhile, Takamura runs with the dog in the forest and runs face first into a giant black bear. Refusing to use bells, he throws hands with the beast. After getting his chest clawed, he aims for the animal's forehead and knocks out the monster bear with his bare fists. Sparing the crying cubs, he limps back and brags, but nobody believes him. The ultimate humiliation comes at dinner. Nakoda serves fresh meat stew and calmly reveals he finished off the unconscious bear with a shotgun blast. Takamura swallows his tears along with the meat he tried to save. In the morning, the group flees, throwing trash out the window to stop the old man and his dog from chasing the car. The gossip reporter Fuji ditches work to drool over the Kamigawa Gym's roster. A trainer brings in his secret weapon, Shigeta, to spar with our useless protagonist. Shigeta uses southpaw magic to mash Ippo's face in, while his friends watch with the same utility as a lamppost. At home, Ippo gets a call from the arrogant Sendo, who mocks the southpaw and pushes paid tickets to his own fight, proving that being champ doesn't pay the bills. The gym turns into a zoo of reporters curious about Takamura beating a bear, but Kamigawa kicks everyone out and drops the bomb that Takamura will fight a world title eliminator. Reporter Mari insults Japanese boxing but makes an exception for Takamura and notes the lethal potential in Ippo's growth. Event day arrives and Nakota fights a staff member to smuggle his dog into the arena, while Ippo carries a suspiciously massive bag. Kimura and Aoki decide to be useful and beat the souls out of their opponents in the semi-finals. Kimura tries to play Cupid by pointing Ippo toward Kumi in the crowd, but she has a jealous meltdown seeing Ippo with the reporter Mari. In the main event, Takamura enters the ring wearing a literal bearskin with claw marks on his chest. Ignoring all common sense, he uses only his left hand the entire fight, treating the challenger like a glitchy NPC until the ref stops the slaughter. Days later, Nakota proves to be a master on the mitts, making Kamigawa jealous of being replaced by a newer model. Kumi stalks Ippo at practice, demanding his first autograph, but Mari corners him first. Furious, Kumi leaves a sign calling him an idiot. With Kamigawa fuming with jealousy and Nakota fleeing back to the woods, Ippo finally tears open the envelope with Sendo's fight tickets. Ippo and his Jurassic trainer take a train to Osaka to watch Sendo defend the belt against Shigeta. Right in the first round, Shigeta punches the champ's face and whispers in the clinch that he and Ippo are overrated trash. Sendo snaps in a fit of rage, takes a heavy beating, and only survives by the bell. To make matters worse, he gets a massive scolding from his own grandmother during the break. Driven by pure hatred and shame, Sendo returns for the third round with thickened calves, dashes at the speed of light, and buries a punch in Shigeta's liver. The champion mercilessly massacres the challenger until the ref steps in, guaranteeing Shigeta severe trauma and broken reflexes for the rest of his life.
Please, Sendo, don't do it!
Hold it, Sendo!
With the opponent down, Sendo grabs the mic and calls Ippo out for a death match in November. Our protagonist steps into the ring and melts the bloodthirsty crowd by saying he just wants to win as a birthday present, making Sendo's own grandmother beg Ippo to beat up her grandson. While Ippo processes the Osaka trip, Kumi drags him on a date to the zoo. The romantic mood dies fast when Ippo compares a tiger to Sendo and gets a golden shower from the feline. After losing his dignity, Kumi apologizes for the sign at the gym, revealing she freaked out from jealousy over the autographs given to other girls. The simp promises that his first autograph as champion will be hers. Meanwhile, reporter Mari in Osaka uncovers Sendo's lore with his grandmother. His father died in a fire saving a child, turning him into a vigilante who beats up bullies to protect the weak. In the present, Mari watches Sendo beat down 3 fighters from higher weight classes at once in the gym, using ankle weights to train his lower body to neutralize the Dempsey roll. He confesses to Mari that Ippo's fists terrify him, but taking a beating from the protagonist brings him indescribable pleasure. The masochist is thirsty for Ippo's strength, purely focused on the thrill of a brutal slugfest. The gym plasters posters for Lollapalooza, the title match. While Aoki and Kimura drool over the opportunity, Takamura steps on them, reminding them they're losers. Mari snoops on the training, and Ippo bluffs that the Dempsey roll won't work against Sendo's stance, throwing out the cliche that they aren't fighting for medal, but for their spiritual connection. At the official weigh-in, Ippo and Sendo stare each other down in a closed room, impressed by each other's musculature in a moment of pure brotherly tension. Sendo confesses he's trembling all over with excitement. The anxiety is so high that Ippo spends the night tossing and turning in bed. On fight day, Sendo's crowd drowns out Ippo's measly fan club, and even Mashiba is watching with gratuitous hatred. In the locker rooms, the two can barely control their excitement to start smashing each other. When the bell rings, Ippo throws caution to the wind. He dashes madly and engages the Dempsey roll at full force right out of the gate. Sendo tries to block, but the protagonist tears through his defense, smashes the champion's face, and sends him to the canvas in the opening seconds of the round. At the ref's count of 8, his killer instinct awakens, and Sendo gets up grabbing the referee's collar. With the carnage unleashed, Ippo tries the Dempsey roll again and knocks the champ into the ropes. But Sendo uses the ring rope's elasticity to launch a monumental smash. Ippo blocks it, but the force draws blood from his nose. Within 30 seconds, blood is dripping like a horror movie. Kamigawa screams to finish it, and Ippo engages the third Dempsey roll. However, Sendo charges like a tank, crushing the technique before it builds speed and breaking Ippo's Ippo's guard with another smash. They abandon defense and destroy each other's faces in a wild slugfest until the bell. In the second round, Sendo's extra size and weight make a difference. Crushed against the ropes, Ippo feels his rival's overwhelming pressure, panicking as he realizes the punches are literally killing him from the inside. The psychological damage is so lethal that in the third round, Ippo's body completely freezes in the center of the ring, paralyzed by the sheer terror of being turned into ground meat. Sendo swings his fists with killing intent while Ippo desperately backs away, hugging his guard like a coward. Sendo gets depressed, realizing he waited 21 months to beat up a wimpy punching bag with legs. Humiliation seems certain until the protagonist's dog barks from the crowd, restoring the protagonist's courage. In the fourth round, Ippo tries to launch his Dempsey roll, but Sendo blocks it before it even begins. The open brawl explodes and Sendo fires a deadly smash that pushes Ippo to the brink of death. As the champion closes the distance to finish him off, Ippo pulls out a gazelle punch on pure instinct and buries Sendo's face into the canvas. The champion staggers up during the referee's count. Knowing his rival is still breathing, Ippo rushes in to annihilate him, but his jello legs fail miserably, forcing the referee to halt the temporary bloodbath before the worst happens. In the fifth round, Sendo has a convenient flashback and lands a perfect cross counter, sending Ippo straight to the canvas. The protagonist gets up only to take another dirty brick to the back of the head and fall face first. Sendo strikes a victory pose like an arrogant peacock, and Kamigawa is already prepping the white towel. But the memories of his last failure trigger Ippo's stubbornness. He refuses to die and rises like a zombie. Sendo is furious. Capitalizing on the champion's desperation, Ippo sinks his fist into his liver, cracking 2 ribs with a sickening snap. To finish the damage, he lands 2 more blows, turning Sendo's bones to dust and forcing him to fight crooked.
The third chop to the liver! They stopped the champion's momentum with body blows!
The sixth round becomes a festival of cranial trauma, with decapitating punches flying every second. Blood sprays, the crowd goes wild, and the trainers ditch the towel so as not to ruin the show. Amidst the destruction, the dazed protagonist has the audacity to ask his trainer what it means to be strong. Both refuse to sit during the break so they don't feel the absurd pain in their bodies. In the seventh round, Sendo locks into a crossguard, silently begging Ippo to try the Dempsey roll. The protagonist takes the bait, and the move fails, resulting in a brutal clash where Sendo buries a smash into Ippo's face, and Ippo counters into his rival's mashed liver. Realizing brute force isn't enough, Ippo uses the Saki killing intent, feinting a punch that makes Sendo completely drop his guard. Capitalizing with a devastating gazelle punch, Ippo leaves the champion blind in the crossfire. With Sendo defenseless, Ippo unleashes an uninterrupted Dempsey roll, hammering his opponent's face until he dispatches his unconscious body to the canvas. Sendo tries to stand up for dramatic effect, but passes out in the referee's arms. Ippo is crowned the new featherweight champion, hoisting the belt and taking photos with the dog that saved him. He goes home and sleeps with the belt lying next to him in bed. Days later, Kamigawa attempts a deep conversation about strength, but Ippo remains clueless. In the middle of an interview at the gym, they discover Takamura was eavesdropping behind the door. The brute throws his own boss out of the office to brag about the past. A flashback reveals old Kamigawa finding a teenage Takamura beating up everyone on the street. Feeling up his muscles, he decides to teach him to fight in the ring instead of calling the cops. Finding the gym boring, Takamura is forced to run while being chased by the old man on a scooter, with his right arm tied up to force southpaw punches. The training turns into a bizarre torture session where Takamura pulls the scooter like a horse. He drops weight and celebrates by pulling his pants down to brag about his private parts in the locker room. 3 months later, in his grand debut against Sakura, he shakes like a pincher but dominates with insane speed, winning by TKO in 25 seconds. Thinking he's the king of the world, he paints the gym walls yellow. Back in the present, old Kamigawa opens the door, catches a shirtless Takamura hitting on the reporter, and draws his cane to beat the crap out of the pervert. Ippo, now the Japanese featherweight champion, continues fishing in peace, too shy to handle the routine congratulations. During his morning run, wearing the jacket Kumi gave him, he reflects on Kamigawa's harsh advice. The belt has made him a coveted target. His celebration with the gym members was a traditional madness that almost ended in a brawl. During training, training, Ippo crosses paths with Miyata. His former rival coldly warns him that Ippo's first title defense will come after the new year, urging him to protect the belt so as not to ruin their future showdown. At the gym, Kamigawa discovers the return of his old rival, Dankichi Hama. Dankichi was an agile master, forced into early retirement by his glass jaw, and now introduces his protege, Kazuki Sanada, who has mastered the fearsome Hien, whose punches change direction mid-air, and the devastating Tsubame Gaishi. Will Kumi root for his victory? Forced by Takamura's antics into making a love confession at a restaurant, Ippo breaks down. He makes the grave mistake of suggesting she attend the title match to cheer for the charismatic and talented Sanada. Hurt, Kumi accepts the suggestion, leaving Ippo isolated to embrace his obsessive anti-Hien training. Sanada, besides being a handsome medical student, uses his anatomical knowledge in combat, testing his killer instinct and treating Ippo's physiology like a fragile clinical subject. Match day arrives at Korakuen Hall. As soon as the bell rings, Sanada uses the Hien to destabilize Ippo's weak guard. Through the lethal combination of the Tsubame Gaishi, a slicing double uppercut, Ippo's defenses are overcome. Even after temporarily neutralizing the uppercut with the cross-arm block and returning the punishment with liver blows, Ippo suffers precise manual surgeries on his organs. He turns purple from a lack of oxygen and stamina, on the verge of breaking under Sanada's polished technique. However, driven by the sheer killer obstinacy cultivated with Kamigawa, Ippo refuses to crumble. In a dramatic fifth round, he shatters the medical defenses with the raw fury of the Gazelle Punch, followed by the lethal roar of the Dempsey Roll, completely draining his reserves. Sanada yields to the curse of his glass jaw and falls. The fight ends in Ippo's favor. Sanada leaves the sport feeling he has overcome his doubts, returning to his future as a true doctor. Later, with Dankichi departing, a peaceful afternoon at the pier grants Kumi and Ippo a romantic moment, with her declaring her loyal support for him, interrupted only by yet another humiliating, full-blown brawl caused by Takamura and Aoki throwing fish. In the gym's office, Kamigawa drops a bombshell. In the next Champion Carnival, Kimura will fight for his first time for the JBC national belt. The bigger shock comes when the opponent is revealed: Mashiba, Kumi's fearsome brother, whom the rest of the federation has terrifyingly avoided. Torn by the moral conflict, Ippo listens as the veteran promises to tear Mashiba's head off to claim glory. Falling into deep despair, Kimura chases down Miyata and begs for sparring sessions, since the prodigy is one of the few capable of mimicking Mashiba's footwork and monstrous flicker jab. Although he pays a heavy price by getting thoroughly beaten by Miyata, Kimura realizes his fatal flaw. His polished boxing lacks fangs, killer instinct, and finishing blows. Passive outboxing is dead. Oki, demonstrating his deep friendship, humbly drops to his knees, begging Miyata to actually help his partner.
あいつに悔いを残させないでくれ。頼む。
Studying tapes, the veteran understands he must embrace the danger and step inside the lethal zone of the flicker jab. In the solitude of his separate training, Kimura draws inspiration from his pet fish's jumping ability and develops the dragonfish blow, a powerful overhand punch aimed at breaking through defenders. On the night of the event, the physical disparity is undeniable. When the bell rings, the champion tortures Kimura with rounds of crushing flicker jabs, cutting and humiliating the veteran's flesh, testing his own reach for the world belt. Enduring a torturous massacre for 6 rounds, Kimura's resilience silences Mashiba's pride. In the 7th, Kimura steps inside the attack radius with his revamped dodging and lands a hard blow to the villain's abdomen. The mental game reaches its climax. Desperate to protect his liver from the constant bombardment, Mashiba drops his guard and invites his doom, taking the violent dragonfish blow flush and crashing to the canvas before a panicked crowd. Rising back up brutalized, Mashiba restarts the bout, turning the 9th round into an irrational savagery. A violent exchange of synchronized strikes explodes, decided solely by the technical advantage of Mashiba's long arm. Missing by just 3 tragic centimeters on his hook, Kimura collapses unconscious. Rising purely driven by the stubbornness to win, yet completely detached from reality, Kimura attempts to throw one last punch as the referee waves off the massacre, securing Mashiba's crown. In the locker rooms, breaking down in tears facing the harsh reality of lost years and unrewarded maximum effort, Kimura announces his retirement. Days later, haunted by those mere centimeters of tragedy, his enduring love for boxing resurrects the veteran. In a pathetic move that only his stubbornness could justify, he comes out of retirement, returning returning to the ring, keeping everything the same, now just pretending the kanji of his name are retired and using katakana syllables for his comical new ring name. On the boat, Ippo receives a champion's praise, but gets embarrassed like a schoolboy. At the gym, Kamigawa complains that Ippo has the threat level of a poodle and needs to act like a champ. In the showers, Aoki questions the romance with Kumi, and Takamura abusively suggests using Ippo's tool to knock out both Mashiba and his sister at once. Ignoring the insanity, Kimura travels to act as a punching bag for Miyata. However, in the rival gym, Kimura knocks Miyata down 3 times. The boy's father stops the session, explaining that the extreme starvation diet has dried him out like a mummy, ruining his body just to make the featherweight limit. Meanwhile, OPBF champion Arnie Gregory mercilessly beats down his own sparring partners. The guy's manager threatens reporters with the Bloody Cross, a lethal and mysterious technique. The news reaches the Kamigawa gym, where Takamura warns that Ippo will have to avenge Miyata's possible death, but the loyal protagonist defends his rival. At the official weigh-in, Miyata barely passes at the brink of dehydration, preparing for the lethal clash focused entirely on the privilege of eventually facing Ippo. The foreigner Gregory steps into the ring, tossing his hat, acting like he owns the world. When the bell rings, he charges like a bull and corners Miyata, but the kid dodges and lands a counter straight to his face. Acknowledging the talent, Gregory unleashes relentless left jabs in a brutal barrage. Miyata takes the beating on purpose to burn the pattern into his mind, shifts to his forward-facing style, and lands his famous cross counter, sending the Australian to the mat before the round ends. In their corner, Miyata's team notes the concerning gap in raw strength. Gregory and his manager smile like villains, ready to spring their trap. In the second round, the foreigner throws the bait by using the same sequence. The stubborn Miyata tries to counter and eats a punch. Trying again, Gregory pulls out the lethal Bloody Cross. He smashes his elbow into Miyata's arm, bending the punch out of the way, and follows up with a crushing straight right. Miyata is bombarded by sickening hooks and collapses to the floor, but he pounds the canvas with shattered pride, refusing to give up on life. Miyata stands up trembling, eats more of Gregory's bulldozer-like beating, and collapses, being saved by the referee, who turns a blind eye and calls it a slip. In the corner, he realizes his fragile body is at its limit and decides to bet all his energy on a suicidal punch, but his father demands technical discipline, cutting off the madness. The third round erupts. Miyata attacks but backs away terrified as he remembers the Bloody Cross, opening his guard perfectly to take a devastating liver blow. Gregory batters the defenseless kid, but is horrified to see him still standing, driven purely by the promise to challenge Ippo. During the break, Gregory tells his suited manager to shut up, fires him on the spot, and decides to fight for his own self-respect. The fourth round starts with Miyata calling Gregory to the center of the ring. The foreigner accepts and tries to trigger the Bloody Cross on the kid's elbow. However, the obstinate Miyata uses his own body weight to force the bone back into place, burying a monstrous jolt counter right in Gregory's face and sending the champion crashing down with a deafening thud. The referee starts the count, and Gregory actually tries to get up at 8, but collapses, drunk on pain, crowning Miyata the new OPBF featherweight champion. The kid survives on pure stubbornness. Watching this, Ippo realizes Miyata has become a distant star, while Takamura hits him over the head to wake him up. In the hallways, former champion Gregory crosses paths with Miyata and begs to know what kept him standing. The answer, Japanese stubbornness, is enough for Gregory to place his own hat on the kid's head and walk away, respecting his conqueror. Back at the gym, reporter Mari drops the bomb that Eiji Date will challenge for the world title against Ricardo Martinez, a monster with 62 wins and 0 losses, in a rematch of a past humiliation. But the old man Kamigawa walks in and freezes the room with the worst possible news. The world champion is in Japan, and specifically requested a sparring session against local champion Ippo, who agrees to face the living legend to get a taste of hell. Before walking into the international slaughterhouse, Ippo's friends try to comfort him with cheap bar napkin math. At the luxurious Ottawa gym, the Mexican god of boxing dispatches Japanese fighters without breaking a sweat. The protagonist steps into the ring unprotected, blindly trusting that at least one of his punches will graze the foreigner. He quickly advances with his pendulum weave, but Ricardo buries a phantom jab in his face without warning. Kamigawa explains that his punches travel the shortest possible path. Desperate, Ippo resorts to the Dempsey roll, but Ricardo unleashes a machine gun barrage of motionless lefts before the kid can throw a single punch. Ippo gets knocked out on his feet, eyes wide open. Taking pity, the Mexican ends the session. The next day, Ippo spies on Date's training as he batters Miyata in a sparring match, realizing that the challenger might actually stand a chance against the monster, while the two young men swallow the bitter pill of their own inexperience in the real world. At the press conference, Ricardo lays down the brutal reality of the power gap, while Date thanks him for delivering the belt. The next day, Takamura and Ippo bump into the older Date during his morning jog. The challenger delivers a motivational speech, but Takamura throws a bucket of ice water on it, warning that on the world stage, only raw power sets the rules. The night before the massacre, Date tells his wife that the family man will return with the prize. Arriving at the arena, Ippo massages his idol's ego one last time, promising to keep following in his footsteps. In the ring, the Mexican's trainer oozes laziness, but when the bell rings, Date ignores the script, charges in, and shocks humanity by landing a clean punch straight to the legendary champion's face. The first punch causes a collective meltdown of euphoria. Date adopts a suicidal style, pounding the Mexican's guard like a rabid pincher. Ricardo doesn't lose his composure and casually absorbs the incoming aggression. In the second round, Date throws out bait by intentionally dropping his guard, but Ricardo reads the old man's mind and lands a devastating rock-solid liver blow. Date swallows the pain and fires back a stubborn combo. The third round arrives, and the Mexican gets tired of playing the gentleman, unleashing a storm of brutal violence. The beating is so severe that by the 8th round, Date's ribcage has turned to dust. In the stands, Ippo realizes the old man is only taking the beating on purpose to set up his ultimate strike. Ignoring his failing anatomy, Date launches the infamous heartbreak shot, attempting to paralyze the champion's circulatory system. The punch meets Ricardo's vibranium-like elbow, shattering Date's right hand into 500 pieces. The champion pulverizes his face until his mouthpiece flies into the crowd. With pulverized ribs, Date hears his trainer consider throwing in the towel, but his wife yells for her husband to head straight back into the meat grinder. In the 10th round, the zombie attacks with his left hand, fakes everyone out, and punches the Mexican's face using the shattered bones of his right hand. He twists his mangled wrist for the heartbreak shot, but the powerless blow fails to stop anyone's time. Ricardo crowns the old man a true samurai and dispatches him with a devastating corkscrew blow. The crowd plunges into mourning. Ippo visits the mummy in the hospital, where Date passes on an imaginary baton. The defeated man's son furiously demands revenge, but the kid shrinks back, calling the Mexican too strong and getting scolded by the child. Ippo soon discovers that his next title defense opponent is a guy named Hammer Now. Meanwhile, the gym gets fresh blood. Itagaki, a rookie runner-up in the high school nationals and an obsessed Ippo fanboy who completely ignores Aoki and Kimura. On the classic morning run, Itagaki nearly coughs up his lungs, reminding the veterans of their former lackey, Yamada. The nostalgia takes a hit when Kamigawa puts on a VHS tape. The terrifying Hammer Now, a maniac who dropped a weight class to hunt down Ippo, is none other than Yamada, now bald and shredded. The shock paralyzes the group. The former trash can project is now dishing out vicious liver blows. Ippo's psyche is left in tatters, to the point of losing his edge during mitt training. Aoki and Kimura go snoop on the bald guy, but he shuts them down. He doesn't want pleasantries. He just wants to rip the belt away from the protagonist through pure aggression. The reporter rubs it into Ippo's fragile mind that Yamada walked the path of absolute masochism solely for the privilege of being beaten up by his idol. Ippo realizes that the only way to respect his former pupil is to beat the crap out of him, pounding Kamigawa's mitts with brutality.
山田君、君の思いに応えるよ。
At the weigh-in, Yamada refuses the friendly handshake. Ippo finally wakes up and delivers a cold response. At Korakuen Hall, before the main event, Aoki embarrasses himself on national television against a Filipino fighter, nearly turning into a floor mat before winning by decision with his pathetic frog punch under a chorus of boos. In the locker room, the bald fighter trembles with dread, destroying his knuckles against the wall and revealing to his trainer that this will be his last dance. He will retire immediately after, turning the fight into a kamikaze kamikaze suicide attack. The bell rings and any friendship turns to dust. Ippo ignores the glove touch, buries a straight right into the bald guy's face, and sends his ex-lackey to the floor in 30 seconds. Yamada gets up, but Ippo smashes his guard and secures a second knockdown. The champion prays for the referee to end the torture, but the stubborn bald man keeps coming back. Ippo tries to take his head off, but Yamada activates the turtle strategy and starts digging holes in Ippo's stomach with body hooks. Kamigawa gives his pupil a monumental scolding for fighting like an amateur. In the second round, Yamada shows his fangs. He grabs Ippo's arm to forcefully pry open his guard and sinks his fist into the solar plexus in a dirty move. As Ippo suffocates on the ropes, Kamigawa drools in admiration at the bald man's thug-like instinct, while Takamura explains that Yamada ran marathons to thicken his thighs. Realizing that staying on the defensive is useless, Ippo abandons his boxing stance and switches to street brawl mode, swinging his arms in desperation. Even while taking punches to the face, Ippo lands a liver blow that shuts the bald guy down. However, Yamada gets up, driven by the desire to take more of a beating. They trade brutal punches until Ippo unleashes a devastating right straight that rearranges his opponent's face, successfully defending his belt. In the aftermath, Ippo doesn't visit the loser's locker room. Yamada cancels his retirement to continue chasing his idol. In the shower, Ippo reflects on how Yamada's strength left his own body trembling. The beach episode has arrived. Takamura drags his underlings along while Ippo goes on a date with Kumi, arranged by Aoki. At night, Ippo sets the mood for a romantic confession, but stalls for 3 business days, and the girl falls asleep. Farther away, Takamura leads a voyeurism expedition. He finds a target in the dark until a firework reveals the victim, Tomiko, Aoki's girlfriend. Chaos ensues, and Takamura flees into the sea. Believing he is fighting a water ghost, he starts punching the water, beating up the elderly Nakoda and his dog. The next day, Takamura tries to apologize by bizarrely praising Tomiko's body. Aoki plots revenge by hiding a sea bug in Takamura's food. When the dish is served, Takamura cuts it in half and forces Aoki to participate in a culinary Russian roulette with the bug's guts. Itagaki asks to be a punching bag, and Ippo beats him until he faints in the 3rd round. At night, Takamura finds the sea bug in his own feces, thinks he's contracted a demonic curse, and isolates himself in the bathroom. The team strokes his ego until the giant re-emerges, shooting fireworks and declaring himself the only star in the world. Back at the gym, rookie Amai shows up to train. Built like a tank, he absorbs Ippo's impacts and returns bricks, shocking the champion. Itagaki nearly collapses as Amai is the bully who knocked him out in the past. The rookie announces he will speedrun his way to stealing Ippo's belt. To make matters worse, news arrives that Takamura's world title fight will be in December, right after his October bout, forcing him into a suicidal starvation diet orchestrated by Brian Hawk's camp. With the world match in December, Itagaki and Kimura fight in October. Fuji warns that Brian Hawk is a lunatic who doesn't train, gets drunk with women, and hung up the phone upon hearing about the Japanese challenger, making Takamura swear a death vow against the foreigner. October arrives and Itagaki debuts acting untouchable. His opponent Makino headbutts the kid right in the face. Itagaki goes to complain, eats a straight, and then takes an elbow to the face, going down and losing the fight. Ippo tells him he lacked desperation. Kimura steps into the ring right after, takes a brutal beating, and wins on a robbed decision. In the main event, Takamura enters looking skeletal and constipated thanks to Aoki's bug, facing Morris West looking like he'll pass out just from breathing. Takamura shambles forward like an anorexic zombie, throwing weak, pathetic punches. West takes them all wide open and uses the Japanese champion as a punching bag. In the second round, West turns Takamura's face into an abstract painting. When Takamura hugs his opponent to keep from falling, he has a vision from hell, Brian Hawk in the audience smiling with 2 women. The sight awakens the giant's fury. Forgetting his weakness, the ring turns into a bar fight. Takamura eats punches, returns them with interest, and lands a monstrous boulder of a hit that sends West flying through the ropes. Victory by ring-out knockout. Takamura ignores the interview and bails.
かなり効いてたはずなのに、一つ一つ正確にカウンター拾っていくなんて、テクニックの凄さに見せつけられましたよ。
The cocky American barges into the locker room to announce that he came to Japan for the women, making everyone's blood boil. Hearing the insults makes Takamura lunge to rip Hawk's head off, but the American casually absorbs the furious punch with his palm and flees. The gym realizes that Hawk fights like a rabid animal, being 1,000 times worse version of Takamura. Curious, Ippo, Aoki, and Kimura go to Takamura's house and discover that he is the heir to a billionaire empire. His younger brother says because Takamura hates Aoki. In sheer panic, Aoki lies that he is Ippo, forcing Ippo to pretend to be Itagaki. The sister reveals Takamura was disinherited for sending 20 spectators at a game to the hospital in a brawl. The suited brother offers him a company if the Brute wins the world title, but Takamura tells him to shove the proposal, making it clear that the ring of blood and sweat is his true habitat. At the gym, Takamura realizes he'll need extreme measures. In a moment of sheer stupidity, he shaves off Aoki's eyebrows to make him look like Hawk. Kamigawa fixes it by drawing eyebrows on the poor guy's face with a permanent marker. Takamura's weight cut is brutal, dropping 20 kilos and turning into a human raisin. His sister tries to help him produce saliva with dried mushrooms. Kamigawa apologizes for the torture, but the Brute promises to swallow 6 weight classes. His punches lose power due to dehydration. While Takamura hallucinates from starvation in bed, the imbecile Brian Hawk lands surrounded by women, announcing on television that he only came to sample the local delicacies, leaving Takamura's skeleton boiling with rage. Hawk comes in for the public sparring session, takes a beating on purpose, and runs off to go clubbing, while the zombie version of Takamura gets beaten up in his own training. At the weigh-in, a miracle happens, and Takamura hits the exact limit, being called a mummy by Hawk, who pokes his chest. At the press conference, Takamura rehydrates and promises a knockout. Hawk tosses his room number to reporter Mari, and during the stare-down plays dirty by sneaking a hook onto Takamura's chin and slapping Kamigawa in the face. On fight day, Takamura confesses to Ippo that Hawk is terrifying. Ippo steps into the ring, fires up the Dempsey roll at the first bell, and crushes Korean fighter Yi Yeon-soo with a hook that instantly shuts his brain off, securing a brutal victory. Ippo wins by TKO in the first round and gets scolded by Kamigawa for attacking recklessly. In Takamura's locker room, Sendo, Mayata, Date, and the Japanese champions demand revenge against the foreigner. Takamura pretends to think it's all a waste of time, but deep down, he melts with emotion over his friends. Kamigawa gives the final push, reminding him that the raw strength from his training will grind the foreigner into dust. Takamura marches out wearing a giant falcon costume. Hawk makes his arrogant walkout with escorts, ripping up a fan's Takamura shirt and showing off a shredded physique that makes zero sense for someone who spent the week drinking. In the center of the ring, Hawk sticks his tongue out like a psychopath. The bell rings and the bloodbath is authorized. The battle of the century explodes. Hawk sways like a drunken inflatable tube man. Takamura fires off and draws blood from the champion. Hawk arches his back and throws an uppercut from an impossible angle, but ends up smashing his fist into the ring corner pad. Hawk turns on beatdown mode and grinds the protagonist's face. Takamura stops running and plants a punch into his stomach, but the foreigner's trainer reveals the sad reality. That is purely the juice of street violence. In the second round, looking to prove his fundamentals, Takamura smashes his opponent's face and buries his right hand, dragging Hawk into his hell of speed. The problem is that the foreigner has a turbo engine, accelerates even further, and makes Takamura kiss the canvas. Our hero gets up huffing, yelling that he merely slipped on his own pride. Kamigawa realizes the tragedy. The alpha predator has met a monster with an even sharper killer instinct. The bout resumes in an insane shootout. Hawk shifts into 5th gear and shreds the hero, sending him to the canvas in a pool of blood. Takamura beats the count at 8 out of sheer dumb stubbornness. With jelly legs in the last 40 seconds, he turns his back. Hawk goes in for the kill, but Takamura's body dodges on autopilot and fires off a basic jab that drops the champion. In the corner, Takamura swears he's downloaded the villain's moves. Round 3 turns into a madhouse. Takamura throws his guard in the trash for an all-out street brawl. In a suicidal, exhausting 4th round, Takamura raises his arms and warns the crowd that it's slaughter time. The crowd goes wild. Hawk tries to pull his street cred but eats punches in the exchange. Sensing Takamura's engine is redlining, Hawk's trainer focuses on cowardly turtling while Takamura unloads his frustration on the defense. During the break, Kamigawa notices the lack of fresh sweat. Takamura is completely dried out from his brutal weight cut. Round 6 is a one-sided horror show, sending the protagonist to the mat. The supporting cast cries in the stands. Kamigawa refuses to throw in the towel. As he is pushed back, Takamura hallucinates the old man's hands supporting his back. Fueled by the absurd power of friendship and his fan club's hysterical screaming, he pulls strength from beyond the grave and lands 3 straight bombs right on Hawk's mug. With a deformed smile, he tells Kamigawa he's the best second in the world and heads back to the slaughterhouse. Takamura takes such a beating his brain shuts off. He hallucinates his trainer getting slapped and taps into a gorilla's killer instinct. Landing a brutal counter on the American, he starts battering Hawk with precise, compact punches, proving that the refined technique hiding behind his meathead look is terrifying. Hawk eats an uppercut, crumbles, and Takamura thinks the count is for himself before noticing his rival kissing the canvas. In the corner, Hawk cowers in fear like a rat. The final round calls for an all-out slugfest. Hawk sets a final trap, but Takamura slips it at the exact millisecond and answers with a crushing hook to the champ's face, burying him into the floor. Hawk tries to get up whimpering but eats a straight right, spits blood, and goes out cold. The carnage is finally over. The arena almost collapses cheering for Takamura's victory, but instead of hugging his trainer, the exhausted champion is crushed by the gym idiots. Kamigawa hands him the belt, and the crowd begs the hero for a speech. Of course, Takamura only opens his mouth to offer his seat on the mic to any woman interested in repopulating the country. The disgusted audience immediately turns him into a human target, throwing bottles and trash. The next day, a bizarre bronze statue of Takamura arrives at the gym. Useless Aoki manages to break the statue's arm and panics. Takamura walks in wearing sunglasses, acting like the biggest star in the universe, and reveals he spent all his prize money casting the masterpiece and making molds to sell. When he spots his mutilated statue, he sentences Aoki to tour the country selling the overpriced miniatures. Later, Itagaki knocks a poor guy out in the first round and invites Ippo to dinner. Ippo discovers the kid's sister is a cutie, but the whole family suffers from the mental disorder of making terrible puns. Ippo tries to fit in with a lame joke and Itagaki's dad approves. The next day, Takamura hears about this comedic genius and tries to prove his superiority. In the middle of the street, Takamura fires off a dirty pun at Itagaki's dad, who responds by grabbing his own crotch with another nasty joke. They exchange looks of pure, sick respect. Hours later, Takamura returns to the gym, holding his ribs from laughing so hard, admitting absolute defeat because the old man ripped off his own toupee for the final punchline, turning our champion into the newest disciple of geriatric comedy. While Miyata trains like a dehydrated maniac and cries to his dad because the Kamigawa gym is ignoring him, Ippo gives the most disappointing interview of the century. The protagonist frustrates reporters by revealing he has the ambition of a doorknob, failing to challenge world champion Ricardo, and infuriating his peers. Yagi steps in to save the day and announces an absolute miracle. The good-for-nothing Aoki has secured a title shot simply because the higher-ranked guys dropped out. At night, while walking his dog, Ippo is ambushed by a needy Miyata in a dark alley, who aggressively demands to know why Kamigawa hasn't answered his challenge. Ippo sprints back to the gym like a madman and gets an ear-shattering lecture from the trainer for reasons his slow brain can't process. The next day, Ippo thinks he's reinvented the wheel and tells his trainer he's made the Dempsey roll faster. He tries to show off his genius in the ring, but Kamigawa lands a counter in the very first second, rubbing it in the protagonist's face that the extra speed made his punches weak. That night, as the old man admits to Yagi that the kid needs to evolve his technique, Miyata figures out on his own that the Dempsey roll is a weak trap against counters. Ippo promises himself he'll get stronger and faster, because the way the technique is right now, any senior citizen with decent reflexes would lay him out. With no time for our brains to process, we are thrown into a flashback where our protagonist's father sacrifices himself to save his crewmates from a sinking boat. After finding the old man's wet hat at the port, his mother embraces maritime capitalism. Back in the present, the protagonist decides to sweat buckets with old Kamigawa to defend his belt. Meanwhile, a muscle-bound dwarf named Shimabukuro reveals his training routine of holding his breath underwater for 13 minutes, vowing to drown the Dempsey roll. The champion carnival arrives and our hero finally faces someone shorter, but who looks like a brick made of pure hate. The fight starts off timidly, but soon Shimabukuro forces a bar brawl in the middle of the ring. The protagonist is shocked when the dwarf steals his move and lands a perfect gazelle punch right on his face. Ippo realizes his only way out is an all-out slugfest, eating heavy leather until the end of the first round. Pushing into the fifth round, the two trade brutal uppercuts, but the protagonist simply forgets to breathe. His face plunges into cyanosis as his rival keeps swinging without an ounce of mercy. As the beatdown accelerates at a sickening pace, Shimabukuro throws punches so fast that the protagonist blacks out with his eyes open, saved from death only by the bell. In the corner, Kamigawa sees an almost comatose Ippo and orders him to use the Dempsey roll. Round 6 explodes, and Ippo weaves his upper body to unleash his trademark technique. Shimabukuro vomits counters non-stop, but the protagonist goes full zombie mode and refuses to go down. However, the muscle-bound dwarf lands a bizarre hook that snaps the Dempsey roll in half, forcing Ippo to his knees, groaning. Defeat seems certain until Shimabukuro himself forgets how the human respiratory system works and also ends up looking like a smurf from oxygen deprivation. Kamigawa screams for Ippo to take a deep breath. In the 7th round, Shimabukuro throws another violent gazelle punch, but Ippo blocks it and escapes the ropes. Running on his final drops of stamina, our hero finds the perfect angle and fiercely spins into the Dempsey roll once again. The impact makes both of their bones crack, but it's Shimabukuro's stubby legs that turn to jelly first, giving Ippo the win.
彼は純粋なまでのボクサーだ。
Takamura reminds them they are in a boxing ring, not the ocean, before the two blue maniacs finally shake hands. While Ippo enjoys his bed rest, his room is invaded by an unsolicited harem. Nanako wets a towel just to get dangerously close to the protagonist's mouth. Luckily, Kumi pops out of nowhere and ruins the mood, sparking a trading of barbs. To make matters worse, Mari walks in demanding silence just to snoop through the photo album. The three girls almost start an underground brawl, forcing Ippo's mom to intervene armed with cookies. Our smooth-brained hero wakes up completely oblivious to the hormonal warfare. Later, he arrives at the gym, only to find Aoki looking like a malnourished skeleton suffering to make weight. Ippo ignores him and goes to train. The next day, Aoki resurfaces so fat that the entire group declares his career prematurely dead. Aoki spends the rest of the day with an inflated ego, demanding Kimura call him sir, resulting in a pathetic fight. Across town, champion Mai studies tapes, promising not to lose to this walking joke. The morning of the official weigh-in arrives with Mai opening the door, only to have his eyeballs scorched by the sight of Aoki completely butt-naked, dangling his anatomy for the whole universe to see. This grotesque display serves as an appetizer to show the massive difference between the two. While Mai kicked his own girlfriend to the curb trying to become a boxing monk, Aoki spent the whole night getting laid with his beloved Tomiko. He blew all his juice on a sweaty carnal embrace right before the most important moment of his life, rubbing it in a Mai's face that you can have fun at home and still trade punches professionally. While the arena boils with the celibate challenger's resentment, rookie Itagaki decides to be useful and wins his undercard match backstage. But the freak show truly begins when Aoki steps into the ring wearing a victory frog jacket. The crowd goes into a sadistic frenzy, demanding to see the infamous frog punch. In the center of the ring, Mai adopts the stance of a statue paralyzed by hatred, while Aoki bounces side to side like a tree frog with an itch, waiting for the exact moment to spit his amphibian venom. The fight turns into a game of cat and mouse. Mai decides he has no patience for this amphibian clown show and cuts Aoki off with annoying left jabs. He has studied every millimeter of the frog punch and swore to annihilate the technique. The second Aoki tries to launch his attack, Mai brutally rejects the offer and sends the challenger kissing the canvas, rubbing his face into the dirty floor repeatedly in a humiliating massacre. But the master of deception was just acting. Feigning being completely broken, Aoki lets Mai burn all his energy beating on a human punching bag. When the champion can barely keep his guard up, Aoki stands up fresh as a daisy. Standing face to face with his opponent, Aoki freezes and casually turns his head to the side. Mai, having the IQ of a doorknob, can't resist his curiosity and turns his head too, just to see what's in the crowd. Taking advantage of this bizarre opening, Aoki crouches down and buries a monstrous frog punch into his guard, destroying the champion's body and sanity. The clown attacks again with the exact same dirty trick, proving that street smarts always run over hard work. The glorious bloodbath devolves into a pathetic slap fight between two exhausted men. Desperate to end the circus, Aoki bets everything on round 3 of his look-away technique. He jerks his head to the side, praying Mai falls for the trap again, and hands over the victory. The champion almost falls for the joke, but fate throws cold water on the plan. In the crowd, Mai locks eyes with Sachiko, the ex-girlfriend he abandoned in his quest to get stronger. The sight of the girl acts as a divine anchor, gluing Mai's eyes back to the arena. Unaware that his spell failed, Aoki leaps into the frog punch with the confidence of an imbecile. Without the distraction, Mai Imai simply dodges and buries his fist into Aoki's ribs while he's still gliding in the air. With both men fueled purely by the power of their respective women and colossal stubbornness, the fight drags on to the 10th round. Since neither of them passes out, the decision goes to the judges. In a patience-testing anticlimax, the suits declare a miraculous draw. The belt stays put, Imai remains king of the hill, and Aoki walks away hugging his frustration. Takamura announces he couldn't care less about the junior middleweight division and now promises to devour every weight class above it. The big guy vows to crush his next opponent without taking a single punch, but during the fight, he decides to mimic Aoki's ridiculous look-away technique, takes a punch straight to the face, and still manages to knock the poor guy out, proving he is an idiot genius. Meanwhile, Kamigawa decides to destroy our protagonist's self-esteem by calling him the Swiss cheese champion due to the holes in his style. In a pure display of masochism, Ippo chooses to fight Sawamura Ryuhei, a psychopath with major serial killer vibes who doesn't just want to win, but wants to play with human flesh and humiliate his prey. Sawamura's level of sadism is so absurd that he beat up 3 guys in an alley just because he thought their faces looked weird, shoving his own hand down one of their throats. Now this bloodthirsty maniac wants to shred the Dempsey roll, humiliate our introverted kid, and take his belt, setting the stage for an unprecedented bloodbath. While our protagonist is shaking in his boots, Sawamura decides to pay a visit to his old teacher, Kawabe. During dinner, the sadist explains that he loves using counterattacks because they allow him to turn his opponent's own strength against them. On the flip side, Ippo is sweating like a pig in training when he bumps into his old Russian rival, Volg, who has come to ask for his gloves back. At the same time, prodigy Itagaki uses his brain cells to unravel the great trick behind the Dempsey roll. The technique is nothing more than a silly dance that's only scary because it weaves in and out of blind spots. The problem is that taking a single step back completely nullifies the magic and leaves the user wide open to take a brutal punishment, which just so happens to be Sawamura's juicy specialty. Now that the secret is out and the Dempsey roll has proven useless, Ippo realizes he'll need to pull a magical evolution out of a hat if he doesn't want to leave the ring in a body bag. With the Dempsey roll's expiration date approaching, Team Kamigawa uses the Russian Volg as a premium guinea pig. The foreigner's mission is to bash the protagonist's face in until he is forced to evolve. They throw the two into the ring for a friendly spar that quickly turns into an underground cockfight. When Ippo finally revs up the engine of his special move, the Russian takes a step back exactly as planned and lands a perfect counter, sending the champion to dreamland with a single punch. Upon waking up, our hero realizes his technique is trash. Kamigawa drops the bomb that the only solution is to change the rhythm mid-motion, but breaking the momentum of the swing will put so much pressure on his lower body that it could blow out his legs prematurely. While Volg decides to head to the US with a cheesy farewell, Ippo returns to physical torture. He tries to engage the Dempsey roll alone and slams on the brakes mid-motion, feeling excruciating pain tear through his spine. He realizes that mastering this evolution will require him to grind his own muscles down before the psychopath Sawamura does it for him. At the Kamigawa gym door, Kimura, Itagaki, and Aoki drool over the fight poster, fearing for Ippo's life. Tomoko shows up because Kamigawa summoned her to deal with the disaster. The trainer drags everyone to see Ippo sprawled on the floor and announces the kid has finally evolved the Dempsey roll. Tomoko decrees that this suicidal stunt has a limit of 2 uses or his body is done for. Sawamura is cruising on his motorcycle when a gang throws a pipe in his wheel. The psychopath decides to turn their faces into ground beef until teacher Kawabe stops the homicide. Instead of thanking him, the lunatic throws the fight ticket in the old man's face and walks away. On weigh-in day, Kumi becomes Ippo's official lunch delivery girl, stalked by her brother Mashiba. Sawamura grabs the protagonist's hand, saying the meat feels tough. Ippo backs off, promising to settle it in the ring. Mashiba threatens to steal Sawamura's bike, and Ippo interferes playing the hero. Later, Umezawa delivers a garbled message from Volg. In the enemy locker room, Sawamura wakes up from a nightmare about his childhood trauma, drooling to devour devour the champion's flesh in front of boxing's biggest names in the stands. The bell rings and the butcher Ryohei comes in licking his lips to devour our protagonist. Unexpectedly, Ippo channels the devil and spends half the time mercilessly beating the challenger. Ryohei's grimaces of pain were pure theater. The psychopath reveals his clownish side and trips Ippo in the middle of the ring. Our hero keeps charging in like a blind bull, and the sadist spends the fight muttering that Ippo's meat doesn't look appetizing. That's when the psycho pulls his bizarre stance out of the closet. He extends his left arm out in front of him, keeping his right glued to his face. Out of nowhere, he starts firing corkscrew punches without twisting his body, completely ignoring physics. Ippo tries to block the storm and creeps closer, hoping to land a brutal body blow, falling into the most obvious trap in the universe. Ryohei unleashes an absurdly fast and destructive right hook. The protagonist eats 2 deadly hooks raw. His health bar starts flashing red, and the psychopath finally begins to savor his revenge. The beatdown turns into a horror show where Ryohei spends the whole time using our protagonist's face as his private punching bag. Even knowing the opponent has the master key to annihilate his special attack, Ippo makes the decision to start the Dempsey Rolls engine. The result? He eats a colossal counter. He gets up and tries the exact same stupidity again, getting punished with another devastating counter to the face. The champion's face is already unrecognizable mashed potatoes. Ryohei laughs like a maniac and drops elbows on Ippo's spine. Kamigawa almost throws the towel in to save his crushed pupil, but the protagonist finally decides to use his surviving brain cells. When the psychopath launches a deadly punch, Ippo brilliantly uses the enemy's outstretched arm as a pivot pole to initiate the Dempsey roll, recreating his schizophrenic training. Ippo smashes Ryohei's face into the floor with such force that it gives the whole crowd goosebumps. But our protagonist's legs are screaming for help. Stopping the new Dempsey roll midway demands too much from his knees, and continuing is flirting with a wheelchair. Despite leaking blood from his eyes, Ryohei refuses to go down, and the beating continues. The damage finally weighs on the psychopath's body, and Ippo realizes he needs to crush this guy for the honor of boxing. On the flip side, the angry edgelord uses his extreme loneliness as fuel to prove he doesn't need anyone. With both fighters on life support in the 7th round, Ippo shifts into one more Dempsey roll. Ryohei steps in to interrupt the dance, but the protagonist uses his brain, halts his own spin at the very last millisecond, dodges the counter, and leaves the villain wide open. Ippo connects a brutal combo straight to Ryohei's head, mashing his skull into puree and securing the victory. While the champion celebrates, the psychopath is shipped off on a stretcher needing immediate surgery. The medical team checks the protagonist's legs and finds that the muscles are torn, but they will survive. Umezawa now spends his days drawing manga, using the newspaper clipping of Ippo's victory as motivation. Meanwhile, the protagonist finds out from the doctor that his body is wrecked. She forbids him from training, shoves a crutch in his hand, and warns him that continuing to use the new Dempsey roll will throw his career in the trash. Umezawa pops out of a van, revealing he has become a full-time mangaka. When he shows off his finished manuscript at Ippo's house, the gym gorillas start a civil war and tear the entire manga to shreds. The idiots flee, but Umezawa cries tears of joy, realizing that the fight meant his story was addictive. After taping the pages back together, Umezawa cries and confesses that he was one of the jerks who bullied Ippo in the past. The protagonist's mother gives a pep talk and makes the big guy shed tears. After the dramatic farewell, Umezawa leaves for good. Sometime later, Ippo returns to the gym and discovers that Itagaki and Nanako have filled the vacancy on the family boat, with Itagaki almost throwing up while Ippo effortlessly carries massive boxes. To celebrate the fact that our protagonist didn't end up permanently disabled, the crew heads out on the Makunu Uchi family boat. Yagi comes up with a fishing competition where the losers have to skip dinner. Aoki, Kimura, Yagi, and Shinoda reel in fish after fish, while Takamura and Kamigawa can't even catch an old boot, letting their frustration boil over. With his fragile ego shattered, Takamura has a psychotic meltdown, violently shakes his rod, and hooks Aoki's pants, launching the poor guy straight into the ocean. Later, as everyone's stuck stuffs their faces with fish. Coach Kamigawa announces that the big brute is finally going to fight for the WBC, World Boxing Council, middleweight world title. Aoki and Kimura will be cannon fodder in the undercard, and Miyata will fight for the OPBF title right before the main event. During a training camp, Takamura decides to teach Miyata how to use his back muscles, turning his punches into a lethal weapon. Still whining about his loss on the boat, Takamura challenges Yagi to a fishing rematch, completely clueless that Yagi plans to let him win just to protect the champion's ego. Takamura and Yagi try to fish peacefully, but what should be a relaxing retreat turns into a silent, psychotic competition. When Yagi hooks 3 fish, Takamura loses his mind, dives into the lake, and catches 3 barehanded, earning himself a lifetime ban from the fishing pond. Back at the gym, Kimura and Aoki find out they're fighting Aleki Battery and Papaya Dachiu. Takamura capitalizes on their panic and forces them into a bet. If they lose, they have to adopt the same bizarre haircuts as their opponents. Aoki tries to cancel the bet by challenging Yagi to a fishing match, but gets caught in the middle of a romantic date, proving his focus is nowhere near the ring. Meanwhile, world champion David Eagle lands in Japan, radiating the aura of a perfect poster boy. Unlike that primate hawk, Eagle is an Olympic athlete obsessed with facing Takamura. He arrives and immediately clobbers a sparring partner with a flawless knockout, proving to be the ultimate nightmare for our champion's brawling style. At the same time, Takamura ignores hydration and bakes under the scorching sun, preparing his body for war. At the press conference, Eagle hands out compliments, but Takamura tells him to go to hell and refuses to shake his hand. Instead of taking offense, Eagle flashes a huge smile, revealing a bizarre fetish for murderous opponents. In the locker room, Kimura and Aoki are sweating bullets in terror. Takamura destroys whatever peace they had left by rubbing photos of the humiliating haircuts in their faces. Kimura enters the ring first and gets massacred by Aleki Battery's speed, until he discovers the guy's stomach is softer than pudding. He turns the match into a close-quarters bar brawl and scrapes by with a hard-fought draw. Next up is Aoki, who plans to snipe Papaya's mole with his frog punch. The problem is that the mole has miraculously teleported to his opponent's forehead. The fight turns into a bizarre circus. Aoki eats a flying coconut punch, has a hellish vision of himself with a shaved head, and gets up in pure desperation. He unleashes his look-away technique, but Papaya pulls the exact same stunt at the exact same millisecond. Both stooges look away and knock each other out simultaneously in a highly embarrassing double KO. The arena is hyped for Miyata's title defense against Medgon. The Thai fighter steps into the ring but surprisingly shrinks into his shell like a scared turtle and refuses to attack. It turns out the guy sold his dignity, agreeing to act as a human punching bag for 12 rounds so Miyata's former manager could map out his movements. But after eating a few brutal blows to the ribs, the Thai fighter decides he'd rather die with honor than be a puppet. He drops his guard and goes for a suicidal offensive. Terrible idea. The moment he opens up, Miyata taps into his predatory instinct, slips the punch, and buries a blistering counter. Medgon survives by some miracle and gets up for one last desperate rush. However, Miyata has already calibrated his aim. He breaks his own rhythm, throws a venomous feint, and launches a roided-out version of his cross counter that permanently shuts the Thai fighter's lights out. With the victory secured, the crowd completely ignores the corpse on the canvas and starts chanting Ippo's name, demanding the legendary cockfight between the two greatest rivals that everyone is begging to see. In a packed Yokohama arena, Aoki and Kimura are haunted by Nakota's lies. Meanwhile, Ippo bumps into his eternal platonic crush, Miyata, who hands him a medical diagnosis suspecting that Takamura has a detached right retina. He forces Ippo to promise to throw in the towel if the brute's vision goes down the drain. In the ring, the Japanese Hawk tries to conquer his second weight class against the undefeated champion, David Eagle. The bell rings and they start trading punches frantically. Takamura lands the first blow, but Eagle adopts a defensive stance, blocking the strikes with his shoulder and inviting the challenger to attack. Frustrated in the second round, Takamura charges in like a rabid primate, only to discover Eagle's impenetrable defense. The champion reads his rhythm, lands a clean straight, and corners him, dismantling Takamura's wild style with pure technique. In the third round, Eagle sets a trap for the Japanese fighter's predictable attacks. He pretends to hold back to inflate Takamura's ego and bait out a full power swing, then dodges misses and sinks in a devastating counterattack. The Hawk kisses the canvas as the referee begins the count of his shame. Surviving the third round literally hanging on the ropes, Takamura returns to his corner with Kamigawa on the verge of a heart attack. Surprisingly calm for someone with fresh brain damage, the Brute claims he has a plan. In the fourth round, Takamura throws the ugliest, most reckless punches of his career, but Ippo and Miyata sense the underlying genius. Takamura uses his wide swings to trip on purpose, falling onto Eagle and clinching him to neutralize his reach. Now in his natural habitat, he unloads deep body blows into Eagle's abdomen, sending the Olympic medalist to the mat for the first time just before the bell. In the fifth round, Eagle finally feels the heat of the rivalry. They exchange violent blows until an accidental headbutt opens a massive gash over Takamura's left eye. Blood pours down the challenger's face, leaving him virtually blind. However, proving his excessive sportsmanship, Eagle refuses to target the wound. This pity deeply offends Takamura. Furious, the Japanese fighter rejects his charity, and in the sixth round, ruthlessly starts targeting a small cut on Eagle's forehead, drawing boos from the crowd. Date reminds our protagonist that in the professional world, this is standard practice. The round ends with both men bathed in blood in an absolute carnage. The fight turns into an animalistic dogfight until the referee calls the ringside doctor to check Eagle's bloody eye. Takamura roars at the doctor, calling the wound a mere scratch and demanding the fight continue. His psychopathic spirit infects the arena and forces the ref to let the beatdown resume. In the corners, Eagle's cornermen intentionally deepen his cut to divert the blood flow, while Kamigawa tries to close Takamura's wound. The coach screams that he'd give his life to stop the bleeding, prompting Takamura to tell the old man to shut up and just wait for the belt. In the eighth round, Eagle unleashes blows that swell Takamura's right eye shut, blinding him completely. Guided by pure instinct, they trade massive punches that result in a double knockdown. Both get back up at the exact same second. Blind and stumbling, Takamura becomes a punching bag. But just when victory seems certain for the champion, Takamura's highly trained body reacts instinctively. Using the sound of footsteps to pinpoint his prey and visualizing Kamigawa's mitts, he unloads a combination of terrifying precision. The barrage of punches knocks Eagle out cold, crowning Takamura as the new world champion. In the locker room, showing rare humility, Takamura places the belts in Kamigawa's hands, demanding the coach sleep with them. The team carries the beast away as Kamigawa looks up at the ceiling, overwhelmed with immense pride in his greatest son. Takamura has secured world belts and thinks he's the king of the world, but Kamigawa, looking like he's at a funeral, grumbles to Nakota about an unfulfilled promise from the past. Ippo and Aoki arrive and find a photo of a young Kamigawa and Nakota standing next to the beautiful Yuki. Kamigawa calls her the goddess of their youth and immediately gets smacked by Nakota. The elderly brawl ends up accidentally knocking Ippo out. Nakota claims Kamigawa would have been a world champion if it weren't for World War II, triggering a flashback to post-war Japan, where both were dirt-poor prize-fighters trying to give hope to a defeated nation. A colossal American soldier named Ralph Anderson knocks out a local, and his cronies toss candy for the crowd to grovel over. The beautiful Yuki refuses the crumbs. Kamigawa instantly realizes that Anderson has mastered true Western boxing, while Japan has been left behind. The mood darkens when Yuki is seen running away from Anderson. Nakota tries to play the hero, but eats a cross counter and hits the gutter. Kamigawa also ends up knocked out cold on the asphalt. After this ultimate humiliation, Kamigawa invites the terrified girl to live with them in their makeshift home out of abandoned buses. The sadistic Anderson keeps fighting and treating the Japanese nation like trash. In their luxurious scrap metal mansion, Nakota nearly chokes on his dinner. Kamigawa tries to hand him water, but his hand trembles so violently that he crushes the glass. When asked about her origins, Yuki coughs up blood. In tears, she reveals she is a survivor of the Hiroshima atomic bomb and says she came to Tokyo looking for reasons not to give up. Kamigawa, melting on the inside, hugs her and tells her she can stay with them forever. Meanwhile, Nakota burns through all his money buying her a dress. However, the brain damage has already caught up to him. He gets dizzy, loses sensation, and crashes his cart, terrified as his own body begins to fail him. While taking a walk with Yuki, Nakota sees Anderson beating up another poor soul. Noticing the girl's sheer disgust, Nakota decides to face the American in the ring to prove his worth. Kamigawa thinks it's suicide, but admits that his friend's primal instinct is their only shot. The drama peaks in the pouring rain when Yuki confesses her feelings for Kamigawa. Shocked, he runs away, only to catch Nakota begging the girl to run away with him after this final fight. On the day of the bout, Nakota shakes uncontrollably in the locker room. Yuki describes the symptoms to Kamigawa, who realizes his friend has reached the final stages of being punch drunk. He sprints desperately to the arena, arriving just in time to see Nakota crack a little smile at his own funeral. The fight begins, and Nakota surprisingly humiliates the giant, dodging everything with absurd agility. Using his Denko Seka technique, he makes Anderson look paralyzed, leaving the American foaming with rage. The joy is short-lived at the end of the round, with Nakota nearly passing out on his stool. Kamigawa realizes his brain is permanently punch drunk. In the second round, Anderson's patience runs out. He lands a criminal rabbit punch straight to the back of Nakota's neck. The Japanese fighter collapses to the mat with blurred vision, hallucinating about a quiet life on a farm with Yuki. Out of pure selflessness, wanting to spare Kamigawa any guilt, Nakota gets back up only to become a willing punching bag. The referee turns a blind eye while Nakota's bones are pulverized. Kamigawa finally storms the ring, embraces his battered friend, and swears he will destroy the American himself. At the hospital, the doctor confirms that Nakota has suffered permanent brain damage. Consumed by blind fury, Kamigawa begins a brutal training regimen. Lacking natural talent, he compensates by punching a tree trunk daily to forge an iron fist capable of crushing steel. The day of reckoning arrives. Scared out of his wits in the locker room, Kamigawa asks for a slap to the face to snap out of it, walking to the ring carrying the hatred and the shattered dream of his best friend. In the ring, Kamigawa takes a brutal beating from Anderson. Dankichi tries to throw in the towel, but Nakota warns him that Kamigawa would never forgive such interference. The American trainer Miguel notices that the Japanese fighter is absorbing punches with his own face, but answers by massacring the foreigner's arms with his iron fists. Driven by pure suicidal courage, Kamigawa corners his opponent. When Anderson tries to decapitate him with a heavy hook, Kamigawa withstands the impact and notices the giant's body is left wide open. Spurred by Yuki's screams, Kamigawa steps in, eats another brutal punch, but buries his iron left into Anderson's ribs. The impact shatters Kamigawa's own hand, but gravely wounds the American for the first time. Leaving his jaw unprotected, Kamigawa fires his last shot. Anderson raises a high guard, but the Japanese fighter ducks and buries his right deep into the foreigner's abdomen. With his hands completely mangled, Kamigawa watches Anderson leave humiliated on a stretcher as he is declared the winner. At the train station, Nakota decides to become a hermit in the mountains, and Yuki leaves by his side to spend the little time she has left. Knowing his hands are ruined for boxing, Kamigawa promises to raise a world champion in his friend's place. Back in the present, Ippo and Aoki are in tears after hearing the story. Nakota states that Ippo is the true heir to Kamigawa's iron will. To close the moment, the phantom voice of Yuki echoes, telling the old man to take care of himself.